Hidden in the chaos is the element, waiting to strike like snakes. And I'm there too, watching. 2 years of nights have turned me into a nocturnal animal. I must choose my targets carefully. It's a big city. I can't be everywhere. But they don't know where I am. We have a signal now, for when I'm needed. When that light hits the sky, it's not just a call. It's a warning. To them, fear is a tool. They think I'm hiding in the shadows, but I am the shadows. I wish I could say I'm making a difference, but I don't know. Murder, robberies, assault. 2 years later, they're all up. And now this. This city's eating itself. Maybe it can't be saved, but I have to try. Push myself. These nights all roll together in a rush, behind the mask.
We all look for meaning behind the tragedies that befall us, and sometimes the meaning is there. But sometimes, Master Bruce, terrible things just happen. No sinister plots, no secret societies. They just happen.
There is a difference between you and me. We both stared into the abyss, but when it stared back, you blinked.
What is the feature-length podcast? Anyone?
The feature-length podcast is a show where 3 idiots talk about film and entertainment.
Good answer.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, are you talking to us?
Yeah. I'm talking to the voices in my head.
Like, I truly don't know. It felt like a fever dream. I swear to God, I could not
It sounds so
make it up.
stupid hearing that.
If you're listening to this is a podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies and TV for a feature length of time.
The year 1992 marked one of the single most important steps in DC Comics history, the creation of Batman the Animated Series. After the successful relaunch of the Batman brand in the 80s as a serious character with good stories to be told, creator Bruce Timm was tasked with developing an animated TV show to continue the legacy and to serve as a thinly veiled tie-in to Batman 89. What came from this was an entire universe, often dubbed the Timmverse or the DCAU, that has had so much influence it is borderline the definitive version of all the characters it touched, propagating in media to this day, and even creating new elements that would later be adapted by comics because they were so good and so beloved. The chronology of this universe is as follows: 4 seasons of Batman the Animated Series, 2 original movies set during the show's run, Mask of the Phantasm and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, 3 seasons of Superman the Animated Series, a 3-part episode later turned into a single crossover movie between Batman and Superman, 4 seasons of Justice League, and 3 seasons of Batman Beyond, all wrapped up in the final movie, Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Yes, I'm aware I skipped over the Zeta Project tie-in, but I'm not too worried about that because no one really knows about that. This animated universe is, for many, myself included, the definitive interpretation of every character it touches or creates. With writing talent such as Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, Alan Burnett, and Dwayne McDuffie, and not even to mention the actual comic creators that would come to write on the show itself, such as Dennis O'Neil, Jerry Conway, Marv Wolfman, just to name a few, it's hard to go wrong. These shows capture the heart and soul of every character and never fail to miss an opportunity to combine great storytelling with real pathos. Oh, and also a bit of fun. I think calling it the DCAU is fitting because what this universe did for DC is equal to, if not greater than, what the MCU did for Marvel. It redefined what it meant to be a DC fan. And I didn't even mention the voice cast. Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn, created by Paul Dini for this show specifically and later stolen and used in comics. John Glover as the Riddler, Michael Ansara as Mr. Freeze, whose entire origin and story that you're familiar with only exists because it was created in this show. Phil Lamar as Green Lantern, Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor, Michael Rosenbaum as The Flash, and Tim Daly as Superman, just to name the few of the iconic voice performances, all of which we owe to voice casting legend Andrea Romano, who I recommend everyone look up because her body of work is astounding. Every one of these voices not just fit this universe, but would become the definitive voices of their respective media for decades, and in some cases to this very day. I've not read a single Batman comic without the voice of Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill in my head. I've watched this entire universe front to back many times in my childhood. Leading into The Batman this year, I decided to finally share this universe with my friends Dan and Angelo. For years, this has been my baseline of conversation regarding anything DC, and I thought they should start to experience it as well. But, being 24 years old, nobody had time to watch the entire universe front to back. So, I handpicked what I consider to be the essential watch list of episodes/movies, specifically from Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. One day I hope to share Superman the Animated Series and Justice League with them as well, maybe if DC ever stops making exclusively Batman content. But for now, I thought sharing the best of BTAS, a show that was nominated for 19 Emmys with 5 wins, and Batman Beyond, a show that created an entire alternate future for Batman that was so successful, much like Harley and Mr. Freeze, it was stolen by comics, was more than enough. So, welcome back to the Feature Length Podcast. Without further ado, I'm joined as always by Dan.
Hello.
And for the first time on a main episode, Angelo.
Hello.
He's back from the James Bond episode.
Good to have you, Angelo.
Thank you. Thank you for having me yet again.
Yes, I like how anytime Angelo's on an episode, it's an episode with lots of lists from stuff that we've watched.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, going through like a huge back catalog of a franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point of watching a ton of movies and shows if you can't make lists?
Yeah.
That's half the fun of it.
Yeah, it's the only thing that like makes it feel validating.
Official.
Otherwise, it's like, why did I waste my time watching all this stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I've watched this universe countless times, and it has defined what DC is in a way that I feel like a lot of people talk about how nowadays when you think of Marvel, you're basically thinking of the MCU. Like, comics are almost an afterthought, and I feel like this is what that is for DC. Like, when people think of DC, I think they think of the stories and characters as they were represented in this show, and the comics are not necessarily an afterthought, but it's almost like this is the lore that people think of when they think of DC. So I was excited to finally get you guys to watch some stuff. Now, right up top, I just want to say that even within the episodes that we picked, or that I picked for you guys to watch, I know that if anyone is a fan of this universe, they're going to be like, how could you skip over this or that? Trust me, it was so painful for me to have to pick specifically which ones we could fit based on the amount of time we had. But I did my best, so please don't anyone hate me. Eventually, I think you guys would both like to go back and watch what we've missed.
And we've talked about this.
Yeah.
That was like the tier 1 of like the most important episodes, and then we would definitely go back and watch some other enjoyable episodes and important episodes and stuff.
For sure.
And I want to clarify that too. We didn't specifically just pick the best episodes, but just important ones.
Or I thought culturally relevant in terms of like when people think of the show, they think of these episodes and in that sense. So it's not like if you go through top 10 on IMDb, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the ones I picked will be on the top 10 of IMDb, but I really didn't do that at all. I kind of just went by the episode titles and was like, these are the ones I think we should watch and talk about. And just for anyone listening, the format of this is that, we are going to go through episode by episode and also movie by movie that we watch and discuss. Although some are going to be way shorter than others just because there may not be a ton to talk about. And at the end of it, both of you, meaning Dan and Angelo, have your own tier lists / rankings. So we'll be going through that as well at the end of the episode just to let people know.
Yeah, so that kind of started because we were just going to get together to watch the episodes, and I think you already mentioned this, in preparation for the Batman movie originally. And then we did a second round, or like continued that even afterwards because we wanted to watch more. Mm-hmm. And along the way, Marco was like, why don't you guys rank these as we go along?
Yeah.
And so that was just sort of an afterthought. But yes, we have tier lists ranking where we put all of the episodes / movies that we'll go through as well.
For sure. Yeah, and just, I don't have one, and like I said, I talked to you guys about this, but just so people know, like, when you watch these episodes as much as I have, in as many different contexts as I have, to me it's just kind of like, I mean, I picked all these ones because they're kind of my tier 1. So, like, I don't have much other to say other than, like, we'll talk about the specifics of them as we go. I don't necessarily have a list, but I will give my feedback on your guys' list, I guess, in terms of, like, more or less, that's what I would think, or we'll go in this way or that way. But before we get too far into it, I mean, like, my love and history with this series is clearly outspoken. I've even brought it up on other Batman stuff that we've talked about, which is like half the podcast at this point. In pure listening hours, it might be half the podcast because we've had like multiple over 2.5 hour episodes about Batman.
And we did a 5-hour episode on just the Nolan trilogy.
Exactly. But I'll turn it over to you guys. I mean, I want to get your guys' general thoughts on the experience, and then also maybe like what you were surprised by, because I've obviously talked about this so much that I'm sure you guys weren't like shocked it was good. Because I was like, yeah, this is great. So like, what are your general thoughts and what maybe surprised you about your first viewing?
So Dan, I'll start with general thoughts, and you can back me up if you think the same or not. So
Sure.
Marco kind of explained this earlier as well. Even though this was kind of our first time watching this animated series, it felt really familiar. Like, it felt like our overall kind of knowledge base of the history and lore just kind of was like put forward in these episodes. I don't know if you felt the same way, but like watching them start to finish, it didn't feel like anything was like new. It's like, oh yeah, this is how it started and how we've always kind of known it. Did you feel the same way kind of seeing them?
I did feel the same way. It was like, and I don't mean, and I'm sure you also don't mean to say that it was it felt unoriginal. It's more like seeing where this stuff came from.
Yeah.
Like in terms of these new story elements that are now like super important in Batman, or like the Harley Quinn story, or the Mr. Freeze story or whatever, and just sort of like seeing that where that originated from for the first time, and also just this show, talking about specifically the animated series, but also extending that to beyond a little bit, is like, this is, besides the fact that this is a kid's show, this is like the ideal tone for a Batman piece of media. It also reminded me a lot of the video games, except obviously the video games are a lot darker because they can be, but besides that, because this is network television we're talking about, aside from that, like this is Gotham City as I picture it. I played a lot of the Lego Batman game as a kid. I don't remember if I've ever talked about that on the show yet, but just in case I haven't, I played, like, that was one of my first introductions to like the world of Gotham City, I guess. I didn't see these cartoons at all as a kid growing up, so that was like the base of my knowledge of what the world of Gotham was like aesthetically, and this is just that. Like, this Gotham is that perfect sweet spot of, you can't really place what year it is because the architecture is so dated, but like there's technology that shouldn't exist yet, so it's just sort of in this weird liminal space of liminal time where like and there's like impossibly huge skyscrapers, and everything is like gone to shit, and it's perfect. It's like what you want out of a Gotham City. I just to touch on that too, I mean, kind of like I alluded to in the intro, outside of just the stories being the stories that you know, because like whether it's Harley or Mr. Freeze or whatever, like how much it informed those characters, the way it's informed in media. So like you said, like Lego Batman is basically just what if the Batman the Animated Series universe but Lego. Like it's very much just like we're doing that, and that one even, sorry to interrupt, that one even was based largely off the Keaton films, which so was the show. So it's all in the same ballpark. Exactly. Which, it's kind of interesting because this came out in 92, which is the same year as Batman Returns, but they both sort of started production after 89, after Batman 89. So it's almost like these diverging timelines of like, this was one potential sequel and that is the other one. And then once that one became better. Yes. And once the actual live action sequel became canon, this show was just allowed to be its own thing, basically, which thank God. But it explains a little bit of that. And then also, like, to your point, the video games, I mean, I said on the Nolan episode, and I still stand by this, like, that the Arkham games are probably my definitive Batman, only because it's this, but it doesn't have to be kid-friendly. Like, it's this, but, like, can also show violence. I will say, this show, like, I guess, because you also asked us to say one thing that maybe surprised us a little bit, it was darker at times than I thought it would go. Like, yes, we talked about this, how the Joker doesn't kill people, but he, like, what he does is almost worse at times.
It would be quicker just to kill them off sometimes.
It would be less painful just to kill them.
It's actually more horrific to use the laughing gas.
It's like they found ways to work around the fact that they couldn't show. Although even at times people died in the show. Absolutely. Which also surprised me.
Yeah. Especially as we start talking about Beyond. Beyond had a much grittier, higher death count.
There was a significant death count in Beyond.
And can we also just take a moment to appreciate the opening?
Okay, I'm so glad. We'll definitely we good to talk about it now before we start getting into our breakdowns. But So just so you guys know, the opening was actually heavily inspired by. Back in the 1940s, there were these Superman serials made by this guy named Max Fleischer, and it had almost that animation style, which was the opening animation style, but like for the whole show.
Right.
And that opening was actually, I mean, it's reworked in the final version, but the original concept for it was basically the concept footage that Bruce Timm showed Warner Brothers to be like, this is the show I want to make. And so it was like that animation style and this very gothic and like Batman stuff. And anyway, and they were like, yeah, that's dope, so go ahead and make that show. But like that footage was so important to the fabric of the show that they just used it as the opening.
Nice. So it was like a gothic style animation for a Superman thing originally?
Yeah, but it was more like colorful and...
Oh, okay.
But it was
like gothic in like just like the time period.
Yeah, and like it's very like hand drawn and like the motion of it, like it's very similar in those ways. But yeah, like the color palette and whatnot is Batmanified for the Batman show. But yeah, I think the opening's awesome. Like it sets the tone of Gotham. Like you get the shot of the Batmobile. I love the silhouette of Batman on the roof, just fucking the guys up, and it introduces us to the score, which I should bring up. The score for the Batman show is done by Shirley Walker. Now, because this was supposed to be a sequel to Batman '89, kind of, her directive was to like take the Elfman score from Batman '89 and essentially just kind of tweak it. And I mean, it works because, like I've said, the Elfman score is still my favorite Batman score, and so this is just like a variation on that. So yeah, I mean, it also sounds great, and it also fits the universe. And it ties the whole opening together, I feel like, of just getting you hyped for a Batman episode.
And it also, like, it has its own identity.
Yes.
Besides just being based on the Danny Elfman score. Like, it's got its own motifs and stuff.
Absolutely. Especially once you get into, which we're going to talk about, like, Phantasm. But once you get into Phantasm and she is allowed then to, like, have a full orchestra and bring in the choir as well, like, it adds a whole even, like, different dimension to the sound of it. So it doesn't sound like Danny Elfman. Dope. She's a fantastic composer, so I'm glad. Just give a shout out to her. This score is awesome.
No, you can definitely give her kudos because we watched a lot of these episodes back to back, and we probably could have watched that opening every single time, like without any delay. I think we did for majority of
it. The only times we skipped them when it was like we need to save time.
Yeah,
we need to get because we were running out of time to finish. But yeah, we were all content to watch it.
And I can imagine this coming out as like a weekly show. How excited and hyped you would be like the moment that comes on. Like, that's incredible.
Well, the other thing I think is cool about it too is like, unlike what they would later do in Justice League, and I think even Beyond, I might be misremembering for Beyond, but definitely Justice League, they would have like cold opens kind of, where there would be something that like sets the plot into motion and then you would cut to the intro. But what I like about this is that it starts. It's like no matter what you were doing before you're about to sit down to watch, like the intro starts and it immediately just like takes you into the place you need to be in to watch the show, which is like exactly what a TV show intro should do. Like it should set the stage for you of like, this is what you're about to experience. And then, and this is something else they also changed to save money on animation after, but in Batman the Animated Series, at least the first 3 seasons, after the intro you always cut to a really nice title card. And it was different for every episode, a different art style with a different little piece of music to kind of say like, what is this episode about, who's going to be in it. Whatever. Yeah.
That was nice. Mm-hmm. And that was something, unfortunately, that wasn't carried over for season 4.
Yeah, and then from the rest of the whole DC animated universe, it was not carried over either. They just started doing the white text.
Yeah.
which is kind of lazy. I should say also, like, a couple of things. First of all, season 4 of Batman the Animated Series is technically... They did a redesign in terms of the animation style, and that animation style is then consistent through the rest of the universe. And the reason they changed the animation style is because it was faster and cheaper to do, which kind of sucks. Even though I don't mind a lot of the redesigns, the Joker's redesign fucking sucks.
Yeah.
It's awful.
He has a great design in the original 3 seasons.
Yeah, I know. Their redesign is brutal. But a lot of the redesigns are not bad. But I just...
Yeah, well, actually, there's the one that I think we all agreed was like awesome was Scarecrow.
Yeah,
like
Scarecrow's major redesign.
Yeah,
he sucks in the first, or his look sucks in the first 3 seasons, and it's awesome. Oh, that was another surprisingly dark thing, is that they had a noose around his neck for part of his costume.
Yeah,
in his kids show.
Yeah, that whole episode when we get there, Over the Edge, is just a surprisingly dark thing that they were allowed to make. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, should we jump into the first thing?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put this out there. If anyone is interested in the timeline of this universe and how exactly it makes sense, there's a great YouTube channel called Watchtower Database, which goes over various elements of this whole universe, and they're constantly trying to nail down the timeline and add different elements to the timeline and whatnot. The reason I bring this up is for 2 reasons. One, which we'll get into, even though Justice League, the show, takes place before Batman Beyond, it was actually created after Batman Beyond. This isn't going to matter until we get to the last episode we're talking about, Epilogue. But in case anyone says, why are you doing it that way if you're going in chronological order? That's why. Because I'm going in order of what makes sense, okay? I'm sorry. The release order doesn't necessarily make sense in this case. So, fuck that. The other reason I bring this up is because the first thing we're going to talk about is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Now, this movie was released in between seasons of the animated series, and this movie has 2 timelines. It has a flashback timeline, which is the origin of the Batman in the animated series. Because in this show, Batman just kind of shows up, and he already exists, and he's already in his career. We don't need an origin. So this kind of told the origin, but then there's a present-day timeline, and it's very nebulous when that present-day timeline takes place in the animated series. The Watchtower Database channel has whole breakdowns trying to figure it out. Best we can figure out is that it's somewhere in season 1 pretty early, but we kicked it off starting with that. Just because it also had the origin in there as well, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's talk about Phantasm.
All right. Do you want to...
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, well, this is not to spoil, I won't do this for every episode until the end, but this episode or movie, which I'm counting as an extended episode, was very high on my list. Yes. I really liked it as an origin for Batman, and how... Can we go right into spoilers? Or?
Yeah. So just, if you haven't seen this universe, watch this universe, please. It's great. Spoilers here on out.
Okay. So yeah, I guess the crux of this movie is that Batman is flashing back to his origin for the reason of, we get to see his origin, but mainly for the reason that his origin in this universe is tied to a former lover of his who turns out to be the villain of this story, which is nice. I mean, that's sort of a nuanced way to develop a villain well, especially for the origin story. I don't remember the Phantasm's real name.
Andrea.
Oh, okay. That should have been easy to remember because the casting
director's name is Andrea. Yeah. But also, I just remember because there's that one scene when he's having a flashback and he goes, Andrea,
oh, yeah.
And it's really dramatic.
Right.
Good times.
Andrea.
Yeah, this is great. The animation is better than ever because you'll find that the movies have a higher budget, so the animation is only going to be better. Same with the music and everything, all the technical stuff. All that is great, and yeah, it was just a really good origin story, really good animated Batman movie.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe this is just me because I'm always very oblivious to these things, but throughout this movie and for a lot of the episodes too, it did kind of leave you guessing in a lot of spots. I didn't know Andrea was the villain for a large portion of that movie, and maybe that's just me.
No, it's a twist. Yeah.
So it's good. It's really nice that they keep you tense all the way to the end, and there are even a lot of parts near the end of that movie where I'm I have no idea how they're going to get out of this.
Yeah.
It was keeping me guessing all the way through, and I really did enjoy it for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's dope. I think what the writers of this universe get in terms of Batman being a detective is the fact that almost every episode has some element of trying to figure something out. And, like, it's not so much of Batman modern lore is just, like, the badass that does badass things, and whereas this show, there's always, like, what's going on. Like,
there's always a mystery element.
Yeah, and it keeps you as an audience member also going, like, okay, what's going on? Like, you're trying to figure it out with Batman. And, you know, because most of the episodes are 20-minute, and even with this movie that's technically feature length, a lot of it boils down to, like, let me analyze this with science. And, like, or, like, in this one when he's like, wait a minute, and he just takes a red pen and draws the Joker's face on the thing, like,
yeah.
But it's okay.
That too. So, thanks for reminding me. I think one of my favorite, like, tropes, and trope has a negative connotation sometimes, but I don't mean it that way. One of my favorite tropes of a Batman story is that the villain ends up being, like, just sort of like a distraction from who turns out to be the actual villain of the story, which is unsurprisingly the Joker.
Yeah.
When that's done well, I like that a lot. And this is a case of that, where for like 2/3 of the movie, we're basically just focused on Phantasm, and Joker's just kind of in the background. And in the third act, he is revealed to be sort of the driving force behind most of the plot, and he takes over as like the main enemy of the final act. Because in this movie, Andrea is hunting down the former members of the gang who killed her father. Mm-hmm. And Joker, before he became the Joker, was part of that gang, and that's how he's involved in all of this. So yeah, it led to that kind of funny moment where Bruce was looking at an old black and white photograph of the gang, and there was one of them that had a pointy nose and chin, looked suspiciously like the Joker, so he just took a red pen and drew the smile on his face, and he's like, wait a minute.
To be fair, like, Joker in that movie did have a very specifically defined face.
Before he did that, I was like, this guy's gonna become the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
But I just, the difference between me and Batman is I didn't have to take a red pen and draw it to visualize
But he was conveying it to the audience.
Yes. He was conveying it to all the 5-year-olds that are watching this movie because it's technically animated.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. But I agree. I like that little twist at the end and bring it all around to the Joker. And I do like, just to talk about the origin stuff a little bit, you know, like Batman Year One, the comic, is very much like the Batman origin. That, like, all Batman origins either, like, stem from that or take inspiration from that. Even the movies Begins and the new movie, like, everything is based in Year One lore and whatnot, which is fine. I mean, it makes sense. But to a certain extent, like, I kind of like the animated series origin in Phantasm even a little bit more, because it takes a lot of the stuff that we know from Batman Origins but twists it on its head in kind of an interesting way. So, in Year One, there's like the famous moment of Batman, who's kind of drifter Batman at that point. He's not quite Batman yet, who's been stabbed and he's dying, and he's sitting in his dad's study, and he's basically like having a conversation with his dad, saying, his dead dad, but you know, it's a comic book movie. But he's like talking to the statue of his dad, and he's saying, like, you need to show me the way, because I'm gonna just let myself die otherwise, because I can't, this is the only thing for me, and if you don't show me the way. And it's at that moment when the bat crashes through, and he's like, okay, I got it, I should dress up like a bat, which is cool, like, and definitive. But what I like about this is it actually it does that, but it does the opposite, which was so interesting, which is it's one of my favorite, like, Batman moments ever, of him crying at his parents' grave, being like, I didn't think I would get to be happy again, but, like, it's different, and, like, I am happy again, and is it okay that I'm not gonna follow through with this promise? Which is a great moment. Andrea shows up, and she's like, maybe they are saying it's okay, like, maybe that's why I'm here, maybe that's what I mean. But even just, I love, like, the beats of that story, right? Of that moment, which is, like, the inverse of Year One, of him not saying, show me the way, but him saying, please don't show me the way. But then, like, when he proposes to Andrea is the moment when the bats first fly out of the Batcave, which is, like, a really, like, sad omen of, like, things to come. Then he's exploring the Batcave when he finds out that Andrea left, and she leaves the note saying, no, we can't be together. And we cut from that to what is such, like, a dour but awesome moment of him first suiting up as Batman. and he's just silhouetted the whole time, putting on the costume, and he puts his hand out, and Alfred puts the mask in his hand, and he puts the mask on, and he's all in silhouette, and he turns to face Alfred, and the music cue kicks in, and all Alfred can muster to say, because he's so freaked out, is just "Dear God" as like Batman walks by, and it's like, it's so cool, but it's also so sad. Like, it's so like emotionally driven and sad that like he could have been happy. He had this one chance to maybe be happy again. And he felt so guilty about taking that chance, and he finally was starting to feel comforted about it, and then the person left. And so, like, in this moment of him suiting up, it's not just, I have to do this thing out of this promise I made, but it's also, like, this guilt of, like, I was such a fucking idiot for thinking that life would maybe be better, and it's not. And it's just so cool. It's so not only just, like, him begging with his parents as a reference to year one, but then also Batman and the Joker, like, their origins are always tied in some way, it seems like. Like, whether it's Batman throwing the Joker in the, like, vat of acid, which is, like, pretty synonymous as the Joker's origin, or even, like, in this one, the fact that the Joker was in the gang that Andrea's dad was in, and Bruce was kind of tied to them that way, which, and, like, we talked about, but in Batman 89, the Joker's the guy that kills Bruce's parents, which hypothetically could be true in this universe as well, but they never get into that. Or even, like, in the movie Joker, how it's, like, a Joker thug that kills the Wayne's parents. So, like, they always find some way to make them kind of linked at their origin points, which I really love.
Yeah, just kind of based off what you were saying, too. I just feel like this one gives him so much more of a human motive throughout the whole story. Like, you were saying before how a lot of the other backstories, it is kind of more of, like, a duty and a promise and, like, a self-fulfillment thing that he was putting on himself. But in this one, he was really kind of taking a step back. He's like, I don't want to do this. Like, I have another life. Like, there's a chance for me to be normal. Like, let me pursue it. And then everything just kind of fell through. And it gives him a lot more of, like, a human perspective from, like, our generalized viewing. So, I don't know. I really like it for that reason, too.
Me too. It reminds me fictionally, and I know we've talked about Jesus a lot in the last handful of episodes of the podcast. Well, you haven't.
Not we.
The podcast we.
I think there was a Superstar episode.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
But, there is the very famous story that, like, regardless of religious belief, just works fictionally as a moment of Jesus at the night of the Last Supper going to the garden after and being like, I know this was the plan, but maybe I cannot do this. And basically saying, like, if you want me to, I will, but I would really rather not, and I'm kind of freaking out about it. And then ultimately leaving that moment being, like, double down committed to the cause, right? And, like, this is so that for Batman, but it's also, yeah, to your point, so humanizing. Like, and I think that's why this version of Batman has become so definitive for so many people, is because more than anything, like, as much as Kevin Conroy does a great, like, public Bruce Wayne, as much as he does a great Batman, I think the thing people respond to about this universe is just its ability to, like, get to the core of Bruce Wayne the person. Like, because so much media is just the meme of, if you give Batman enough prep time, he could beat anyone. And it's like, that's the least interesting thing about Batman, like, is him punching people. And it's actually so ironic how Batman is the most human superhero, but he's so not humanized in a lot of media. Because it's almost like, because he's so human, people have to go out of their way to make him seem like a badass. And it's like, you're not leaning into the most interesting part about the character, which is, yeah, he's just a guy. So, like, him, like, having this, like, conflicting thing about, I don't know if this is the thing, and having to double down and commit to it. And even what we see later in the animated series, which we'll get to, of, like, the various partners he works with, and, like, how, like, all those things have played out, and where he ends up as a person in Beyond is, like, it's so tragic. Like, he is such a tragic human character in this. He's not just the guy that could beat Thanos because you had 2 weeks prep time or whatever. Like, fucking, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I hesitate to use the word pathetic, but there are aspects of his life in these shows that are kind of that. Like, especially when you get to Beyond, where he's just this old man sitting in his old cave. And
alone.
It's like, alone, yeah. Alfred's, like, dead.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead by then, right?
Oh, yes.
I believe. Okay, yeah. I mean, I would hope. And
Lazarus Pit just chucks him in. You can't die on me.
Yeah, but this is very much like the most reluctant we've ever seen Bruce Wayne in this movie, I think. Of where he's actively hoping that there is a way besides Batman to go forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is an element of tragedy there for sure.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's so cool. This movie also kind of has the first of what will be many. The Joker died in an explosion, but we didn't find the body, and then the Joker showed up later, which I like. Like, that is a trope from comics as well, and
he's explosion proof.
You know, the other thing I like about that though, as a trope, is it's so much better than the trope of of Batman constantly throwing him in Arkham and him getting out. Like, I much rather the idea that Joker is like this weird force that just like doesn't die somehow, and he's always around, as opposed to he keeps getting fully beaten and escaping.
Yeah, he's a cockroach.
Yeah, he's like
you can't. It's so hard to kill a cockroach, and he just always comes back.
Yes, exactly. That's the perfect analogy for it. Just an awesome kind of origin point for the whole universe.
Awesome origin story, but also I think the climax is also really exciting. Like, it was like an amusement park or this.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, where like the Joker climax takes place.
Yeah, it's like the World's Fair, or like the rundown World's Fair.
It's like this futuristic expo type, abandoned World's Fair area. Yeah. Very Joker, anyway. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool. Where like this is where the Andrea story and the Joker story like culminate. And it's great.
Yeah, it's dope. So dope. And also, like, and I would say too, totally standalone. Like, even if you don't have an interest in ever absorbing this whole universe, like, I would still just watch this as a Batman movie. Like, you can fully take it as a Batman movie, and I know even Art Pats himself talked about, like, this being a really big influence on him, and maybe, like, I think he even said it was his favorite Batman movie, like, going into shooting the Batman, or whatever.
I can see that. Like, I can see him and Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman as Batman and like Andrea in this movie, sort of.
Yeah, they do have that kind of similar relationship, and I think like his Batman, I think, is also the most pathetic in a way. Yeah. Like his Bruce is the most pathetic, definitely, and so that kind of lines up. Because like Bruce Wayne should be kind of pathetic. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's always been my take. I don't know. Like I said, some people just have a very interesting view of who they think Bruce Wayne is, but
I think that's I mean, people have different opinions, but I think that's a very crucial element, and that's also why I like Robert Pattinson's Bruce more than Christian Bale's, even though like most people would agree Christian Bale did a good job of like separating his Batman and his Bruce Wayne to different effect depending on who you ask, but I don't think his was quite pathetic enough now that I've seen the new Batman movie.
His real Bruce, just normal guy interacting with Alfred, I also agree wasn't
just
as
kind of like
sad and pathetic as
put together Playboy Man.
I think, and that's why I think Kevin Conroy is kind of so definitive in the role too, is because he is kind of the first person to ever act it as three different characters. Like when he's public Bruce, he's like one character. When he's regular Bruce, he's just depressed and hates his life. And then when he's Batman, he's like intimidating. Yeah. And like he like kind of pioneered performing it that way. And I don't really think anyone else has ever done all three. I mean, I'm hoping like once we get to future Robert Pattinson, maybe we will get like the full all three distinction of it, which would be cool. But yeah, I mean, everyone has always done either like the duality or just been George Clooney and just everything was the same the whole movie, and there was no attempt made.
Yeah.
All right. Any more thoughts on Phantasm, or shall we move to the first episode that we're talking about?
I'm good to move on. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think just to sum it up, it's a really great, good alternate origin story for this animated universe.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I really wanted to show you guys the very first episode of the show on Leather Wings, just because it is so iconic, and it has a character, Man-Bat, that we don't see a lot of.
I still can't believe they did Man-Bat for the first episode.
Right?
Not the first enemy I would have thought.
And the Joker was episode 2. So,
okay.
But Man-Bat, first episode. Anyway, We didn't do either of those. The first one that we watched was a Scarecrow episode called Nothing to Fear. There really aren't any good Scarecrow episodes until season 4. However, we had to watch this episode because it was not only the introduction of the Scarecrow, but it's where you also get the iconic Batman quote that everyone quotes. Anyway, Nothing to Fear. I'll start off by saying Scarecrow's design, awful.
It's garbage.
It took like half the episode for me to get used to it until I could be like, this is what they're going with.
It's so weird. It's literally like a Scarecrow came to life, but not in a scary way. It's just like, the proportions don't make any sense for this relatively realistic like art style.
Yeah.
Of like proportions mostly making sense. He sticks out like a sore thumb.
And the unfortunate part about that is you just can't take him seriously from that point
know,
forward. Like
yeah.
his fear toxin, like what's going on in the episode, it just gets trumped by the fact that every time he's on screen, you kind of chuckle.
He's got this weird bulbous head that just looks like he's wearing a potato sack.
Yes.
You know what?
Also, I was just gonna say the mouth hole like opens. It's so weird. It's one of those things that like it opens as if that's his mouth. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what's like frustrating for me, and this has always been a problem with me with animation, but like when he takes the mask off later, his head shape is not the shape that his head is when he has the mask on.
Yeah.
And like that, I don't know why, but that frustrates me so much in animation. Like I wish they would stop doing that. Yeah, and also this this episode has a coupon shot, which by coupon shot, like I don't know if that's like a real term or if it's just something the Red Letter Media guys coined, but like normally when you're introducing a character or something in a movie, you have like a money shot, like you have like a very deliberate shot of them, right? And this has that. Like at the beginning of this, they're robbing a bank or whatever, and a helicopter comes and a ladder drops down, and you see this shot of Scarecrow coming down, and you see kind of his feet enter the frame, and then the camera rises up to like reveal the Scarecrow, and there's a big musical sting, except he looks fucking stupid. But like the very first shot of the episode, you see the helicopter flying, and like Scarecrow's just in the helicopter. Like you can full on see him, but it's just like out of focus kind of. And so it's like, when you do this big reveal shot later, it's like, we already fucking saw him in like a coupon shot of like, who cares about this? Anyway, that always just irked me. Like, I was like, why would you animate him in the hell? Just don't show that. Like, just go right to the cool shot.
Or just have tinted windows on the helicopter.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
And I don't know, Scarecrow as a character, I feel like has been and can be done so well with like the fear toxin and like the, you know, ways around it, but in the animated series, and like you said, there weren't many good episodes until like season 4. He was really a sad character. Like he wasn't very enjoyable. He was kind of pathetic in a lot of ways.
Very, very. I would agree. I actually think, I mean, we'll get into it, but I think Mad Hatter ends up in the original run, the original 3 seasons, like kind of fulfilling the role that Scarecrow would normally fulfill, and it's not until season 4 when Scarecrow becomes a Scarecrow we know and love.
Yeah.
Also, the voice actor they got, I mean, no offense, but the guy just sounded like a twerp.
Yeah.
Which maybe it was deliberate. I mean, he's just this weird university professor guy, but like...
That could be the character model they were going with. I mean, who are we to judge? But if so, then that wasn't a very good choice.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I
also, sorry, real quick, I don't like that he's... Like, how do I say this how do I put this politely?
You don't.
I mean, I don't put this politely.
You just say it.
I don't like that he's a redhead. Like, not that I don't like redheads.
Because gingers don't have souls?
No. It's just because I never would have pictured him
Yeah.
as having... Maybe because I'm used to, like, the Dark Knight...
Like Cillian Murphy?
Yeah, the Batman Begins Scarecrow. I don't know why. It's just, like, that was not what I was expecting when he took off the mask.
For sure.
Other than Poison Ivy, is there any other characters who are redheads? Not really.
Mad Hatter.
Was he a redhead?
One.
Maybe in the show, but in the Arkham games, he's a redhead.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes the Riddler is portrayed as that. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Depends. Yeah, they kind of go back and forth on that. Yeah.
Riddler's the type of guy who just dyes his hair a lot. It's fine.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was green in Batman Forever when Jim Carrey played him, right?
Yes.
Carrey. Oh, what a movie, guys. Yeah, I will say, in season 4, he gets the best redesign. He looks horrifying. He looks the way he should. And also, they recast the voice actor, and the guy they got is Jeffrey Combs, who you may not be aware of, but he's actually in the movie Reanimator. Angelo, you and I watched that movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's a famous like B horror movie actor.
Okay.
And so like it made sense to get this more horrifying guy, and he's got this more like hushed, kind of like weird fucking creepy voice, and it is so much better that it's almost like, how did you fuck it up so bad the first time?
It literally reminds me of in the games how when you first meet Scarecrow in Asylum, I really don't like his design. It's better than like this design.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But then similarly, when we like reconvene with him in Arkham Knight, and that game sucks. But like one thing that game did well was his redesign, and the reason in that universe is because he's like mauled by Killer Croc, but still he gets this really cool redesign that reminds me a lot of the season 4 redesign for this show.
Yeah, probably deliberately.
It must have been, because it was very like, it's almost skull like, his face. It kind of looked mauled a little bit. So I'm sure that's where they pulled from with the game.
You know what I hate the most? Well, we'll talk about this episode. There is actually a nice little character thing for Bruce in this episode, so we'll talk about that. But speaking about Scarecrow designs, like, and to go to Arkham Asylum, there's so much about it that does work, except for the stuff I absolutely despise and is like my least favorite ever. Right? Like I like.
There's no in between.
No, the mask with like the respirators I think is kind of cool. It looks kind of creepy looking. That makes sense. I actually really like the like Freddy Krueger glove.
Yeah.
With like the fear toxin.
Oh yeah,
yeah. With like the claws.
His equipment is cool. It's just like,
it's his midriff showing because he's wearing a crop top. Yeah.
And he's so lanky and skinny. Not that he should be a buff character.
No,
but it's just like there's like nothing to his body.
He looks like he'd be bullied by his henchmen.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's discuss a little bit of this episode. I mean, it's funny how much Begins took from this episode. Like, at the beginning, Scarecrow and his goons are using gasoline to light a room on fire, which is directly in Batman Begins.
Yep.
At the end of this, Batman douses Scarecrow with his own fear toxin directly in Batman Begins. Even the way Batman looks.
And the way he says it, he's like, it's the taste of your own medicine line.
Yeah.
And I was rewatching the scene earlier today when I was like perusing for which. Not to spoil it, but we're gonna be saying our favorite quotes from the next show. And I was like thinking about what I wanted to choose for that, so I was rewatching the scene. And I was like, wow, that like Christopher Nolan definitely watched these episodes in preparation for that movie, because that scene, he looks like very similar to Fear Batman in Begins.
Absolutely. Nolan stole a lot. I'll put it that way. Like, even watching the Burton movies, like, there is a lot of visual influence, like Batman barreling down at the Joker in the Batpod is exactly Batman doing that to the Joker in the Batwing in the Burton movies. Like, the Joker showing up and, like, running a gang room meeting and, like, killing the guy and taking, like, Nolan really pulled a lot from those movies. From like other Batman media, which like respect. I mean, you're pulling from good stuff. It's not like you're pulling from bad stuff. But it is kind of funny.
It's funny though, because he said he wasn't inspired by the animated series.
Yeah.
And there were multiple times where we turned to each other and we were like, okay, this is like
one for one,
straight up ripped from
It might be David Goyer, because he's a big nerd. So maybe David Goyer just like wrote it in the script, and Nolan was like,
he'll never even know.
Nolan probably has no idea if you ask him. Yeah, probably.
He's like, what do you mean? I came up with this. This is all like our collective ideas.
He's like, it was in the script.
Yeah. That could be. That's probably what it is.
The thing that always got me with Scarecrow's fear toxin, and it's not just in the animated series, I think this happens like throughout, is whenever he uses it on anyone else, it's always like whatever their greatest fear is that comes to life. But anytime it's ever used on him, it's just Batman turning into a freak. And it's like, he himself, either he's just terrified of Batman in general, but then why would he turn into a monster? You know what I mean? So I don't, like, it's always just interesting seeing that, like...
My greatest fear is Batman if he was slightly more scary than he is now.
Yeah.
That is a very fair complaint. And it is pervasive through all of Batman media, and like... I totally agree. Like, at the beginning of this episode, he uses it on someone, and they see themselves covered in spiders.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I get it. You have arachnophobia, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, a monster Batman, like, what? But then also...
That's a new phobia.
I even think about in Begins, like, nobody in there... Like, Bruce in Begins sees his greatest fear, which is bats.
Yes.
Which is fine for the theming of that movie. I like what they do in this episode more. I promise we'll talk about it. But that's fine that he sees bats because bats frighten me. It's time my enemies, my fear, whatever. You know,
my enemies feel my dread.
Yeah, tell my enemies feel my dread. Okay. I'm on a lot of painkillers for my headaches, so I couldn't pull the line. But like everyone else in Begins just sees weird shit. Fucking Rachel sees like beetles or something on his head. People just see fire coming out of people's eyes. There's no like nobody else sees fears except Batman in that movie.
There's just very little consistency of how they use the toxin just in the entire universe kind of as a whole.
100%.
And I think even when Batman Begins, when Batman's doused with it again in that like Scarecrow apartment fire scene, doesn't he see something completely different that's not bat related? Like it's a different fear?
Yeah, he sees like he just starts having like flashbacks to like his life.
And, no, but doesn't
I'm scared of my past and how it's haunted.
I mean that makes sense, but doesn't he see Scarecrow's mask with like maggots crawling out of it, or is that someone else?
No, I do remember something like that.
I think that happens with Rachel, but maybe it had. No,
anyway,
I
he
thought it
sees
happens
something
in that
different.
scene too, though. I think you're right. I don't know.
It's something Scarecrow related.
Yeah.
Just very inconsistent.
Yeah.
When
I get the point. Of
Yeah.
It's just to scare you, but
yeah.
it would be cool if it was focused on
the character.
Targeting in your brain like your most fear, like your biggest phobia.
It would give you an opportunity to create character development, lo and behold, too, about those fears and like where they come from, why they exist.
And also it's way more tied into his origin because he is a psychology professor that is working on people's fears.
Yes.
That's why he gets fired from the university, so it should be person specific.
And it reminds me of in Harry Potter with the Boggarts,
Yep.
and how like finding out what each person's Boggart looks like tells so much about that character. They could have done something easily with this like that.
Absolutely. Now, I will say, I'm going to put a pin in something. At the end of this episode, I need you guys to remind me to tell you about the Scarecrow's origin in comics.
Okay.
Like his very first appearance. So I have a stack of comics here. The top one is just something I'm reading, but the ones underneath are all like collections that have various characters like original appearance in like whatever year they were introduced in. Cool. I have to tell you guys about the Scarecrow one because it's gonna make you laugh. But I would like to talk about Bruce Wayne's like character moment in this. Yeah. Which is that like his biggest fear in this is like seeing visions of his parents, and by parents I mean father, because
anytime they focus on Bruce Wayne's parents in any Batman media, it's just his father.
Yeah.
His mother barely existed.
Like, to a certain extent, I get it because, like, Bruce being a man, like, I understand, like, that obsession, that very, like, psychological male thing of, like, trying to live up to your father because he is also a man and you are a man. Yeah. So, like, I get that. But I do think it's weird that Martha is constantly just like pearls that get like ripped off her neck. Like,
you know what my problem with it is? Like, I don't mind that his father is the one that he tries to live up to. That's fine. Like, that makes sense. It's like I don't think I've ever heard Martha say a word. I don't think I've ever heard her speak. I wouldn't even be able to tell you like what to think about for her voice.
Me too.
But on the other end of that too, it's like, how do you write her in? Like, what kind of role could she play?
I just want her to say a sentence.
I know, I get that.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. It's like, what role is there for her to play in this mythos in a way?
No, there's not really a role.
But it is just funny how legitimately, like, there's been so many deaths of the Waynes, and we've never heard Martha speak in any of them. She just dies every time.
Yeah, maybe she screamed once. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like I was alluding to, like, Bruce's biggest fear in this is, like, these visions of his father saying, like, you failed us. Like, you disgraced us. Which, it is just kind of funny how, in Begins, which is a movie made for adults about adults, it's, like, a very literal thing. It's, like, bats. Whereas in this, which is, like, a show effectively made for kids that's going to run on Saturday mornings, it's, like, this conceptual, esoteric, like, the fear of my parents not approving me. Like, it's... I don't know, like, I kind of appreciate it. As much as I like the bats things in Begins, because it ties that whole movie together thematically. I think this is, like, a really cool take, and it leads to a really wonderful character moment, and Bruce's, like, I'm Batman moment in the animated universe of basically just being like, no, like I have belief that what I'm doing is the right thing, and like this is who I am, and this is what I'm doing, and this is the person I've become. Yeah, I think it's cool.
So here's an interesting question, completely kind of off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
So in those episodes and like in the beginning of Batman, he did a really good job of conveying like Bruce Wayne and Batman, right? He was kind of doing both roles. But at some point throughout his lifetime, he just completely said, screw Bruce Wayne, like, I am Batman. And he kind of gave up on the family lineage, like, let his corporation go down, everything like that. What do you think was that defining moment for him? Like, was there a point in his life or something where he just completely went over the rails to fully be Batman and, like, pursue that?
Like, are you talking, like... So that would lead to the way we see him in Beyond, where he's just like this grumpy old man that doesn't even differentiate between, like, he's just he doesn't
even call himself Bruce in his head, and we'll get back.
We will get back to that.
But he even refers to himself as Batman, so it's like he completely let go of his humanity.
And I think that's interesting because Kevin Conroy's performance in that as Bruce is basically just Batman. Like he's always basically just doing his Batman voice in that show, even though he's never actually Batman. He's just old man Bruce Wayne, but. To me, without getting like too far ahead, I think it's the Return of the Joker moment.
Yeah.
The flashback from that. Like, I think that is kind of the point at which he breaks. Mm. And chronologically, I don't know if that technically happens before we see him in Justice League. Because in Justice League, like, he is still a well-adjusted Batman.
Yeah.
But personally, in terms of my headcanon, I like to think that the flashback from Return of the Joker... is the last sort of thing pre-Batman Beyond.
Interesting. Okay.
And so to me, that is the breaking point. Because, like, in that, like, he is straight up, like, after what happens, like, he's just going to kill the Joker. Like, he literally is like, fuck it. I'm done. I can't do this.
I can't see that Batman later going on to be like, hey, Justice League, what's on the slate for today?
Exactly. It has to be after.
Yeah.
It has to be. I totally agree. Totally.
Just interested on your thoughts on that, because I thought it was an interesting topic.
Me too. And I think it's a really cool choice on their part, though, like, when making Beyond, to be like in his twilight years, like, there is nothing left. Like, Batman has basically taken over. But also, like, that's not a good thing. Like, I feel like in so much media, like, that's presented as, like, isn't it great that, like, Batman is the true person, whereas in this it's like, no, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
Everyone he loves has left him, and all he's left with is Batman. Like, literally all he has is Batman, and it's not cool.
No.
Like, it's not played as cool. It's played as fucked up and sad that's all that's left.
That's why I love the finale of the Nolan trilogy so much, of, like, how he was able to actually find a life beyond Batman.
It's hopeful. It's definitely hopeful. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because as much as we idolize Batman, and I think that's what Beyond does so well too, we'll get to Beyond later, I know we're talking about it quite a bit, is that, like, if he did just continue on the Batman path, like, he would live a very, very sad and lonely life where he would just decrepit himself to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we can probably move on from this episode now. I mean, this episode has the famous quote that I'm not going to say because I'm sure one or all of us picked it as our quote for later, but...
I didn't pick for mine.
I didn't either, so...
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, it has the I'm vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman quote that everyone quotes all the time. Clearly was very much, I think, an influence on, Dan, your quote of Bruce's monologue from the Batman. Of, like, they think I'm hiding in the shadows, I am the shadows. I don't know, just, like, the phrasing of it seems a little bit like it was influenced from this, and knowing that they did, like, or at least Robert Pattinson was influenced by this, I can imagine maybe that, like, there was a little bit of rewriting there.
And he even says, I'm vengeance in the movie.
Oh, yeah, and he says, I'm vengeance, yeah, duh. Yeah.
I think you mentioned that was, like, the main reason you selected this episode for us to watch.
Yes.
Because the episode itself isn't, like...
Not great.
It's not anything special, although I will say... I haven't seen the Man-Bat episode, but I feel like this would have been a solid first episode to start the series off. Like, Scarecrow is a good first villain, if you're not going to do the Joker.
Yeah.
Scarecrow is a good fear-based villain to have your first episode on. It also establishes why Batman does what he does without having a full-on origin story.
Yeah.
I think this would have made sense. I can see why we skipped to this, because it makes sense as, like...
It's a good starting point.
Yeah.
And also, I mean... As much as it's not a great episode, like the ones that we're going to get to, I think it sets the precedent for what the show can be, which is just like, it actually has some pretty relevant character things to say about Bruce, has a couple of cool action-y moments, has the cool line. It's cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's overall pretty solid as a character thing for Bruce, but like, obviously the show very much ramps up after this. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So yes,
And
let's get
also-
into that.
let's get
go
into
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the title for this episode is a good pilot title.
Yes.
Nothing to fear.
Nothing to fear. It's a good title.
Yeah.
My
Okay,
title's
that's all I
better.
want to say.
I can't wait to find out your
Oh, we'll
title.
get to that.
My titles are better. Don't worry.
I do want to say a couple of things before we leave this episode.
Okay.
Both revolving around Scarecrow being stupid. First of all, in this episode, has maybe my least favorite Scarecrow moment in all of media, which is after... Okay, a couple, which is... How Batman solves the mystery in this is by analyzing it with science, and like 3 names come up, and one of them is like Crane Industries, and it's like, well, yeah. And it's like, we'll cross-reference this against university professors or whatever, and it's like, Jonathan Crane, like, okay, you just Google searched, you didn't really do detective work. That's
No,
fine.
they didn't have the internet in whatever time period this thing
True,
was in.
true.
They just had other science.
They
They
had
just
other
had a
science.
supercomputer
Yeah. With the biggest database
known to
ever.
man.
Yeah.
You can just scan things and do whatever you need it to do.
Absolutely. But so I hate when he goes back to his facility, right? And he's about to douse him with his own fear gas. And there's
Classic
a scene,
Scarecrow.
classic Scarecrow. But before that, Scarecrow's just like fumbling around and he hears something and he goes, I'm gonna edit it in, but he does the most ridiculous.
I
Like,
remember that.
like what was that noise of like hearing something and being like, huh? But instead of just going, huh, he goes, and he like walks over.
Batman?
Oh my god, I would like it makes me laugh so fucking hard.
Not fair. Revenge was within my grasp. I was so close.
So funny. Okay, the other thing I want to say, because there's only one other Scarecrow episode that's going to be 5 hours from now by the time we get there.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Yes.
like, Scarecrow's original origin in the comics in 1960 something, okay?
Oh yeah, you wanted us to remind you to talk about Scarecrow's original origin in the comics from the 60s or something.
Yeah, so we should talk about
I
that. right now.
remember it. Okay. It's the same idea. He is this psychology professor that gets disgraced and nobody likes him. But the Scarecrow did not actually have fear toxin. The Scarecrow was a guy who would basically just dress scary and people would pay him to go scare people. So, like, a mobster would be like, I need money from this person. And he would just, like, dress in a Scarecrow costume and be like, give the mobster his money! And, like, scare them.
That reminds me of the SpongeBob episode when Mr. Krabs is trying to scare SpongeBob by drawing a ghost on a piece of paper
Yes.
and dangling it with string.
No, that is exactly that, yeah.
The
It's-
fact that we immediately went to SpongeBob speaks volumes.
Yeah.
I should also say, though, SpongeBob, Clancy Brown, the voice of Mr. Krabs, is the voice of Lex Luthor in this animated universe.
Seriously?
Oh.
Yeah.
I was not aware
Yeah,
of
me
that.
neither.
Yeah. He's great. He's my favorite Lex Luthor. But also, yeah, he's Mr. Krabs, which is funny.
Cool.
But yeah,
All right.
So
He's
every
also in
every
Lost, by
day,
the way.
Is he?
A very minor part.
Oh, shit. Okay, I can't wait to get there.
honestly, every day is Halloween for Scarecrow.
Every day is Halloween.
Every day is Halloween.
And on that note, we move on to the next episode we watched, which was the Two-Face two-parter.
Yes.
That was the next one we watched?
Yeah, that was the next one we watched.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, something I've talked a lot about loving, which I unfortunately didn't get to share with you guys in this, is up to this point, Harvey Dent was actually in the show as like just a character, and he would like help out Commissioner Gordon and Batman and yada yada yada. And it's only in this episode where he finally becomes Two-Face. Yeah, what do you guys have to say? I mean, I know there's a lot of memorable stuff.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I feel like Two-Face as a character is one of the ones whose origins has not changed drastically over the years.
Right.
So, like, this just kind of felt like another rendition to that, of assuming this was one of the first ones. So for us, it's like seeing it again, but it was one of the first. But overall, like, it was pretty solid. I mean, the character design was very odd and interesting, and half of him being like blue and everything, like,
Oh, right.
was a little off-putting.
I love the blue. I'm gonna put it out there. Like in the comics, he's usually either green or blue. He's never like the burnt face
Green?
red. Yeah, sometimes he's green. And I just, to me, like, I've always liked that, but I totally get it. Like, it makes no sense. He was scarred by acid.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
should be scarred. But
Well, I'm also used to the Lego one where he's black and white. Where like half of his suit is black, but the half of his suit that is black, like the face part above that is like the regular,
opposite?
and then
Oh.
there's like the scarred side
yeah.
with the white suit side.
that's
It's
right.
like-
That's right.
But overall, like I like Harvey as a character. I think the show, like that episode, was well done. Like the 2 parts, and
It had to be 2 parts.
Yeah, it had to be 2 parts.
2 parts.
Oh my god.
The amount of like 2 references that we kept seeing in both episodes was amazing.
So good. I mean, remember at one point he's driving down like the highway, and I was like, notice how there's 2 lanes on this side. Like we
turned it into a game to see how many unintentional.
But some of them made sense. That's a scary thing.
And also, some of them were in the episode. Like, they legitimately were just like, we have to do this 2-theme thing. Yeah.
There were, but then I like how we extended it by, like, just taking it way too far.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's 2 lanes on the road. There's 2 taillights on that car.
Fucking Two-Face.
I also think I like this. So, in my head, there's 2 versions of Two-Face. The one where... There's 2 versions. The one where his coin is... the same on both sides, and then one where it's actually different.
Yeah.
And I think for this rendition, it was different. Like, sometimes he would flip it, it would come up, like, good, and he would stop whatever he was doing.
Yeah.
I like that aspect of it more, just because it does highlight, like, how reliant he is on that coin. Whereas the other one is just kind of more of a trope of, like, yeah, I'm going to flip the coin, and it doesn't matter, because it's going to turn out the same, so whatever I want to do, I'm going to do anyway.
I'm the coin flipper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in this one, I like the way they kind of did it more.
Yeah,
me
me too.
I also appreciate, again, for a kid's show, pretty cool, and also, I think one of the first times they've done it, the idea that, like, Harvey straight up has a different personality, and, like, that's something that he's been dealing with in therapy, and, like, the physical transformation just, like, brought that out. And so, like, the Two-Face is really him in another personality, as opposed to just, like, I'm Harvey, but sometimes I get angry, and so I flip a coin to decide when.
No, I agree with that 100%. I really liked how he had that dual personality before the incident.
Yes.
Well, I agree, and I like that he had it at all, because, for example, in The Dark Knight, like, I like that.
Yeah.
I like how they made a realistic interpretation of Two-Face, but he is just, like, once he becomes Two-Face, he's only the one. He's just angry Harvey Dent.
Yes.
Yes.
For the whole time. And before that, he's like, he gets angry sometimes, but he's not like a schizophrenic, like, double personality.
Absolutely.
He just has one, it's kind of one note. In this, I like that, like you guys said, they not only do that where he has more than one personality in his head, but when he becomes Two-Face, they're, like, amplified. Both sides.
And it's also, I think, true. I mean, I've not really taken psychology in a long time, but I think it's also true that, like, a lot of times, like, physical transformations can, like, onset if there are other, like, psychological things going on in you as well. So, like,
100%.
that's also, like, true to life, that someone with multiple personalities, after having such a crazy physical transformation, like, it might come out in it that way.
So, coming from someone who does take psychology...
Oh, yeah, there you go. Fact check me.
Even just more so than that, like, genetically wise, you can have a gene that disposes you to, like, depression, for instance. But you can go your whole life without ever experiencing depression. Sometimes you have to have an onset that sparks that gene, and then it carries over. So it could be a physical transformation, it could be a traumatic experience, it could be a lot of things.
Right.
But you could always have that gene and just never know it.
Right. Yeah, so that, you know, it's a cool of them to do here. And also, the other little wrinkle that they add, I mean, like you said, the origin, I mean, even going back to the original comics is fairly accurate of, like, in the comics, it's a mob boss that was on trial and they throw acid at Harvey Dent. In this, it's not quite that. Like, he is, like, angry at this mob boss and, like, kind of hunting them down type thing. And then there's an explosion which leads to the acid going on him. So it's similar but not the same. But the other thing...
no.
Okay, so... Yeah, that's ridiculous. That line is ridiculous. But I like what that line represents. Like, I like that Bruce and Harvey have a friendship.
Because Bruce came out in that scene, not Batman.
Yes, and that's another voice performance thing, and I think it's maybe part of why it feels so silly. But I like the choice anyway. That in that moment, he's not Batman. Like, he's fully Bruce Wayne in that scene, being like, "Holy shit, my friend is fucked."
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do?
And that's why I like this series as a whole, is because it gives Batman, aka Bruce, so many human qualities that in a lot of other, renditions of Batman, he just doesn't have because he is Batman.
Because he's Batman. Well, and it's just like how in The Batman, when he's driving back to Wayne Tower and he thinks Alfred's gonna die.
I was just thinking that.
It might be my favorite scene in the whole movie because Aunt Harriet, who's not actually Aunt Harriet, I forget that character's name, but
I can't remember.
whatever. She
It's
picks
alright.
up and he is fully
Doreen.
Yeah, and he's fully Bruce Wayne. He's just like, something bad's gonna happen. Tell Alfred something bad's gonna happen. I love that. It is so, and it's the antithesis of the Dark Knight trilogy where he is just constantly doing his Batman voice, even when he's alone, talking to himself.
Yeah.
So that's what that feels like.
That's like Batman Beyond Bruce Wayne, where he, in his voice, or in his mind, he is always Batman.
Yes.
Which I totally get as like a deranged 80-year-old man, but as like normal in his prime Batman.
And like, there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
Supposedly,
Exactly.
He's completely sane.
Exactly.
It's stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think. Do you guys have anything else to add about this episode in particular? I mean, Two-Face again. Like, I think there's some cool character choices, but again, I still feel like we're in that early stage of like the episode doesn't necessarily have a ton of drive to it.
Yeah.
Even if there's character stuff.
I get that. Like, I don't think it needed to be a two-parter.
No, it had to be a two-parter.
Well, okay, it had to be a two-parter because it's Two-Face.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
besides that, I feel like maybe it went on a bit long being two parts.
Yeah.
I'm not overly crazy about the episode, but I do like what it stands for of like establishing the friendship between Bruce and Harvey, especially for Angelo and I, because we hadn't seen them before in other episodes. So that was nice, and just like, it's a standard Two-Face origin story. It's well done. I just it's kind of low on my list a little bit. Like, I don't really. It's more for the nuggets of information within it that you need.
Yeah.
And I just want to say too that giant penny has now become like a symbol for me, because that giant penny is carried over all the way into Beyond. Like, it never leaves the Batcave, and they like specifically use it in some episodes too. And it's like this random giant like 20-foot penny, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Is this the episode where we see it for the first time?
I think so in the second part.
In the second part, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then he takes it to the Batcave for some reason, and then it stays there his entire life till he's 80.
Because he always collects trophies. That's what Batman does.
For some reason.
So is this the origin of the Batcave like penny that is always talked about?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't think it was ever in anything before this,
Still don't know where that T-Rex came from.
Yeah.
I get the Joker card and the coin, but
Yeah, the T-Rex, I don't know.
It was a back in time episode.
Sure. Alright, next episode is Heart of Ice. Sticking with the villain origin. So this one, first ever Emmy nominated, and I think it won the Emmy.
nice.
Nice.
And, yeah, I mean, just right off the bat, we'll say, like, anything, like, everyone, at this point in time, everyone knows Mr. Freeze, right? Of the scientist whose wife is stuck in this cryo-freeze thing, and now, like, he's, like, trying to find the cure for her, and he's really sympathetic. That is all this episode. Like, before this, Mr. Freeze was a joke. He was, like, a D-tier list idiot villain with, like, an ice gun. I was like, I got an ice gun. Like, that was literally him.
Do you like the cold?
Yeah, exactly. Until this episode. I've always found it a little surprising that this one won an Emmy, just because I don't think that episode itself, again, has a ton of great drive.
Me too. It's more for similar to the Harvey Dent one. Like, it's seeing where this legendary interpretation of Mr. Freeze came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And the performance, I think, is great from the voice actor. Like, again, this is very much like my definitive Freeze, because he's not trying to be scary. Like, he's just a guy, like, in a suit, who's just, like, talking very coldly, because he's Mr. Freeze.
Yeah. One thing I don't like about... Like, this extends to so many villains, but I hate the trope of a villain, like, their real name being somehow tied to what they become. Like, did we need to give him the last name Freeze spelt differently? Or like, did we need to give Poison Ivy the name of Pamela Isley, and just when,
Harley Quinzel.
Harley and Quinzel is
maybe the worst one.
That is the worst one. That is
I don't know. I like it just because of how silly it is.
It is silly, yeah, but I mean, it's, Yeah.
Like, that's one thing I'm really glad for the Batman movie. I like that they're going with a weirder tone, but I do like how they restrained from calling the Riddler Edward Nygma.
Yeah, they call him Nashton.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine with me. Like,
Yeah.
little tweaks like that.
Close enough.
I don't know. Mr. Freeze, for me, like, I do like his backstory. I just never think they've really done him justice.
Sure, like in execution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I like his backstory, but in execution, he just comes across as whiny and obsessive. And
Yeah, I get that.
I don't know. Not a huge... Like, the episodes were good. Like, there was a lot of, emotion behind it. But, like you said, even as kind of a character, kind of meh overall.
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious to show you guys, like, so he has like a 5-episode arc throughout the animated series and then 1 episode of Beyond. He has sort of an arc through that a little bit. But it's all very much reliant on, his love for Nora, and there's also the other animated movie that we didn't watch, Batman Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, which as a kid I watched way more than Phantasm because it had Batgirl and Robin in it, and it was like more of an adventure. Which I remember being kind of cool, but I haven't seen in a long time, and I'm sure probably doesn't hold up as being like a top tier anything. I think the problem with Mr. Freeze is, as much pathos as he has, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, what do you do that's interesting about a guy with a freeze gun, almost? Where it's kind of like, if you just take like, if Batman just throws a batarang and gets rid of the freeze gun, that's it. Like, and so a lot of the time it ends up going into, like, ridiculousness of, like, I'm trying to freeze the city, and it's like, why? No, like, you're trying to help
Batman and Robin.
Yes. Maybe. And, like, I guess the problem is because he's so not a villain, because he's so, like, I'm literally just trying to help my wife, which is a cool character thing, you really have to, like, find a cool way to put him against Batman. A cool way to put him against Batman. I think Arkham City is my favorite Mr. Freeze thing ever.
Yeah, that's great.
Where, like, they're against each other, but not because he's being a villain. It's just because of, like, the situation that they're in.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, the execution a lot of the time just isn't there. But, like, the premise, the backstory, the motive, the emotion, it's all there for a good character.
Yeah.
They just don't really implement it very well.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And also, going back to Arkham City, I like how in that world, he just exists. Like, he's not plotting something huge like the Joker or Ra's al Ghul. Like, he's just doing his own thing, trying to continue his personal quest.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, when he crosses paths with Batman, it's just, they want different things, and that's why they fight. And ultimately, at the end of that fight, which is an awesome boss fight,
It is.
It's the best boss fight.
They semi-make up and, like, they're like, okay, we need to get back on track of what we want here. Like, I can help you find your wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Batman's just there with his fingers, like, you're going too far, beats him up, and just like, all right, I'll leave you, I'll see you next month.
Yeah, after landing 6 punches, I think it is, in different techniques, then they're like, okay, we've done this for long enough.
Yeah. What a good boss fight. One day we'll talk about those games, but that boss fight is so much fun. Yeah, I agree with everything that we've said. I mean, and I guess to a certain extent, that's why the Beyond Freeze episode is probably my favorite Freeze episode.
Agreed.
Because it's the one where he is the least villain-like.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have to make him a villain. Like, he can just be that character.
Yeah.
And actually, him not being a villain is kind of part of Bruce's own, I guess, arc a little bit in that. So, yeah, that's kind of where I fall with that.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to get to our tier list, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, it's going to be a long time. No, we'll get there. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay, up next is Feet of Clay, Part 1 and 2.
Oh boy.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know what to say about this one, because this is just sort of like, it's a good... this is another one that I don't think needed to be 2 parts.
Yeah, this one definitely didn't need to be 2 parts.
Because it's Clayface. Like, he's not nearly as deep as Harvey Dent or Mr. Freeze. Like, it was a fine episode. It's not, like, offensively... It's not bad or anything, but...
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of dragged a little bit for me. It's definitely lower on the list for me.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about it. I mean, origin story is fine. Like, him constantly having to mud his face is
It's very
interesting.
silly.
It is silly. Even the way, like, he ended up being defeated was silly, too.
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll
in
get
the
to. Oh, go
in the
ahead.
TV room, like
Yeah.
where he's just watching his performance.
Yeah, and then he can't like control himself. He's like turning into like all the actors he's been and all that stuff. And I don't know. It's fine. I just didn't tie with it myself.
I think for me, like, I like everything they're trying to do conceptually, like having him be essentially just a vain actor. And so, like, he becomes obsessed with appearance, which is what leads him to be able to change his appearance. And then even again, like, tying that into his defeat, like, okay, what's his crux as a character? He's so vain, so then we have to, like, use that vanity against him at the end. Like, that all makes sense from a, like, an outline perspective. But yeah, I just feel like the actual way it is done,
It's very on the nose.
it's very on the nose. It's like we needed almost, I feel like, a couple extra passes at the script and to really kind of get it to a place where it wouldn't just be him watching footage of himself and freaking out. And,
Even the way he turned into Clayface of them just like dumping the stuff on him or whatever, like in his mouth or like whatever the heck was going on in that episode is just so bizarre. It was so weird.
It is weird. For some reason, I watched this two-parter a lot as a kid. Like, a lot. And I don't know why. Like, I know why I watched that first Scarecrow episode a lot. Because A, I just loved Scarecrow as a character, and B, because it actually has, like, some cool Batman stuff. This one, I cannot make sense of why I came back and watched this one so much. Like, I think it might just be because of, like, the dynamic art style, like, of Clayface. Like, just because that is visually interesting.
Yeah, I will agree with that. And he reminded me a lot of the Lego Batman Clayface.
Yes.
Like, I'm sure this is 100% where they chose to
100%.
design him from.
Yeah.
What was I going to say, though? Yeah, so this is a two-parter, and what kind of sucks is that the whole first part is not even, like... It's just him... It's an explanation for why he becomes the visual Clayface that you're familiar with. He's just kind of this guy with a weird face in the first episode.
Do you think originally when this was being created they thought Clayface was going to be more of a staple in the Batman universe and that's why they gave him 2 parts?
Well, how many episodes does he have?
He pops up a lot.
So you're kind of right there.
But, like...
maybe.
I don't know. I do wonder, too. I mean, I feel like... Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's them thinking, like, well, this is animation, so we'll probably end up using this character a lot because you can do so many dynamic things with him. So maybe that's why they spent so much time. But I do... Of all the two-parters, this is the one that I think is the, like, most light on story.
Yeah.
Like, at least the Two-Face one, there's, like, more emotional stuff happening. This one is just very, like, oh, man, are we still fucking watching this guy turn into Clayface? Like, can we just cut to the chase here?
I'm going to even go as far as to say that when I think about Batman, Clayface is not on my, like, top tier of villains that I would associate with.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely... He comes to mind in his rogues gallery for me, but it's not like... He's just sort of like a Bane where he's more of a physical threat than anything else.
He's a good...
It's an interesting concept, and it's like you need... Every good superhero, like, mythos needs a shape-shifting character.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
This is kind of that.
Yeah, I think Clayface works when, like, there's someone else pulling the strings. And like
in Arkham City.
Like in Arkham City. Like he's involved.
Yeah, he's just utilized as like a tool.
Yeah.
In that one. And it's a clever thing.
Clayface is a tool.
He just ends up becoming a top tier henchman instead of a low tier villain.
Exactly. Well, they hire him like an actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
The role of a lifetime.
Yeah,
crazy.
Exactly.
I think that is it in Batman Hush? Where, like, Bruce thinks Jason Todd was brought back. This is before the Red Hood story, though. And then it turns out it was Clayface.
I think so.
Yeah, and then I think, like, when they ask why, he's like, it was the role of a lifetime or something like that. It's just like, oh my... Like, it's so eye-rolly, but, like, yeah.
Well, I never even realized, in Arkham City, in the finale, it takes place in a theater. Like the modern theater.
My god, of course.
And he's an actor, and he was hired by the Joker to play the Joker. That's cool.
I guess it is cool. I'm always so hesitant about like art like movies about movies. I feel like sometimes can get really pretentious, but like.
Well, yeah, this is not like a pretentious thing.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. If anything, it's played more like silly.
Yeah.
Like, look at this idiot actor. Like, haha, our actor's dumb, which like is kind of fun. All right, now we get to, I think for me, the first like truly great one that we're going to talk about, which is Perchance to Dream.
Yes.
Ah, yes.
This episode is so good. And just to like say the premise, because we haven't really done that, but most of these have just been origin stories, so that's fine. But Perchance to Dream, basically, Bruce Wayne wakes up and has his ideal life. He's like dating Selena Kyle, his parents are alive, his business is going great. Everything's great. Bruce Wayne's life, great. But like it's not real. And like he starts to realize it's not real. And also like there is still a Batman in this universe. And he's like, what? Like, because he remembers his old life and he's like, what's happening? And it's like a mystery of like, what the fuck is going on here?
Actually, I forget, did we find out who the Batman is, or is he just like Batman?
No, it's more just like a
illusion.
It's like his subconscious coming through.
Metaphysical nonsense.
Yeah.
It's also a weird thing. He can't read in that universe,
which I love. Which is such a fun clue that this is a dream. Like as we talked about when this episode happened, but like in your dreams, you can't actually perceive like text or time. Like none of that is logical in dreams. And so, yeah, there is a point in this where Bruce is kind of like, yeah, maybe I will give in and just accept that this is my life until he tries to read something and he realizes that none of it makes sense.
Yeah, and stuff like that is cool even as the audience to be like, what is going on?
Yeah, so cool. So cool. I absolutely love this episode, and I just love, like, I'm such a sucker, and I know it's so cheesy, but, like, just the dynamic visual of, like, Bruce having to, like, face Batman. Like, and them, like, being, like, physical opposite forces to each other is, like, so cool.
Because actually, I guess the Batman in this is kind of just the manifestation of Mad Hatter.
Yes, because ultimately it's revealed that Mad Hatter.
He's behind the whole thing.
But I can imagine in Bruce's own, like, subconscious, it must be a battle like that constantly between Bruce Wayne and Batman.
That's why it's cool. That's why it's so cool to actually see that represented.
Yeah, but it's all, like, in the backdrop of this Mad Hatter fake scenario story, which is nice.
This is the only Mad Hatter episode that we did. I love Mad Hatter. The Mad Hatter in this. He's cool. I know sometimes he can be like a very low tier character, but I think he's done really well in this. This is a really cool episode. In his introduction episode, he basically is working for Wayne Enterprises as like a tech guy, and he's in love with his secretary named Alice. And so, like, when he becomes disgruntled, that's why he takes on the Mad Hatter persona, because, like, Alice in Wonderland. But this, I think, is, like, the pinnacle of his episodes. And I just think it's a fantastic episode. And it also relates to a very famous comic called For the Man Who Has Everything, which is a Superman comic. And we talked about this a little bit. And they actually did an episode of Justice League adapting that comic, which is cool. And we'll watch it one day. But basically, the premise of that is Superman wakes up and he's on Krypton with his family and he has a kid and his life is all perfect and everything. And it turns out, like, in the real world, Bruce and Wonder Woman are going to the Fortress of Solitude for Superman's birthday, and when they find him there's like this alien on him that has him in like this comatose state that's like sucking the life out of him. And as they are able and start to detach the alien from him, narratively in Superman's like vision world, Krypton starts to like be destroyed like it actually was.
Nice.
Which is so cool. And like there's this really wonderful moment where he's talking to his son and he's like, you have to know that like I love you and you mean the world to me, but I'm pretty sure you're not real. And it's like so fucked up. And so this reminds me a lot of that. And like Batman discovering he can't read, and like this Batman figure being in the universe and him being like, what the fuck is going on? It's really cool. It's really awesome.
But also him just accepting too, like if there was another Batman that he could take that back seat, and the fact he's totally okay with that is really like reminiscent of the fact that he kind of wants to live a life without Batman.
Yep.
It's so connected to Phantasm.
It is.
And it's again such a wonderful just like Bruce character episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a really good self-contained animated series episode.
Absolutely.
Still don't know why he brought the flare gun, though. We never find out why he uses that. Because Bruce Wayne, at some point, hatches a scheme to jump off the tower, and he gets a grapple hook and rope and a flare gun for some reason.
Does he not shoot the flare gun? I feel like I remember him shooting the flare gun. I just don't remember the purpose why.
Wait. I think he shot the flare gun to bring Batman to him.
That's what I thought.
But I think there was something else he got that he didn't use. Like, he got a handful of things, And I think he used the flare gun. I don't remember if he used the rope. Did he actually use the rope?
Yeah, he used that to climb up to the top of the cemetery tower.
I think there was a third thing. I think there was like something he didn't use, and we were like, okay.
Oh, I thought it was the flare gun.
I
It ended up as a memento in the Batcave. It's fine.
Yeah. It's there forever now.
He brought it from the imaginary world.
Man, I'm just going through these episodes, and like, there's so many good ones we didn't watch. Fuck.
That's all right. We'll get to it. Let's keep going.
All right. The next one we talked about, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich?
Ooh, Riddler episodes arrive.
I'm just going to say it. The animated series Riddler is my favorite Riddler.
He's great.
Ever.
He's like the perfect, not too much stupid, silly Riddler, but also not like an edgelord Riddler.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't this also the first episode for us that we saw Robin?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dick Grayson Robin exists in this universe. Actually, he's in episode 2. But one of the cool things they do is because this universe already exists, it picks up at a point where Robin is a little bit older and he's like college aged. And so he's not always with Batman. Like, this is a college age Robin that goes to school and stuff and only sometimes has time to be Robin with Batman. Which explains why you can do more isolated Batman episodes, which I think is a nice little choice. But yeah, Robin's in this. This episode is about Edward Nygma. Enigma. Get it? Get it?
Wait, I don't get it.
Enigma. Remember in Batman Forever when they like do that and he's like, what's another name for a riddle?
Oh, puzzle, yeah.
An enigma.
Fucking
Fucking hate that.
When I was playing the Lego Batman game as a kid, and before each level, like which starred one of the villains, there was a character description, and it said like the Riddler, aka Edward Nygma, and I was like, wait, I see what you're doing there. Like I felt so smart when it's the most
obvious
thing ever. I was like, hold on, Enigma.
I know.
See, but this is why I like these things.
Yeah, and also, to be fair, it is made for kids, so like, it's operating at that level, so like that's fair. This episode's cool.
This is a good episode.
I like the idea of the Riddler as just being this guy that's like knows he's smarter than the people that are making decisions for his life, and kind of has like a superiority
you're right, complex
complex because of it, and is essentially just trying to like get revenge and be like, I am smarter than you, fuck you. It's cool.
I really like the origin. I'm not as much of a fan in this episode in particular of the whole like Minotaur maze stuff that happened
I
near
like
the
that
end.
stuff though.
And I really hated, and I will never let this go now, Batman's riddle at the very end where he's like, I don't even remember, it was so stupid I don't even remember it. He's like, how do you beat a Minotaur? And he's, what did he say?
I don't know. I don't remember.
He's like, you hit it, and he like smacks it. And it's just like, that's not a riddle, Batman. That's
Okay, but Batman's not the Riddler.
Yeah, true.
But he solves all the riddles.
I solved your riddle, Nygma. Now here's one for you. How do you take out a Minotaur with a single blow? Like this.
Yeah, I like that stuff. I think some of the riddles were kind of funny and like dumb.
Yeah.
But some of the ones in the maze were actually pretty cool. Like the one where they have to pick the right key.
Yes.
And they're labeled by like letters, and it's like a musical key riddle type thing.
That one was cool.
The only thing that I don't like about the Riddler in the grand scheme of things, and this is only just because it would take too long to do, is how quickly they have to let Batman solve the riddles, where it doesn't give us as an audience a lot of context or time. Like sometimes he'll solve a riddle with like extra knowledge that we don't have, or he's just like, because I know this, I can solve this. Or like something just to like keep things moving throughout the episode in like movies and everything. So I get why they can't fix that, but it is a little frustrating sometimes because I'd love to have that challenge and be like, how is he going to figure this out? Like, how would I figure this out? And then once you get the answer, you'd be like, oh, well, that makes a ton of sense. Where sometimes it's just like, holy crap, Batman, he didn't finish speaking. How do you know?
Well, it very much is like the Sherlock Holmes methods of deduction, where it's just like, You're just saying things. Because there isn't time to leave clues so the clues can be discovered.
Yes.
And so it's just like... I mean, I know... I can't remember an exact one, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, of just... I know this because of this, and therefore it has to be that. And it's like, okay, sure, if you say so, Batman. I mean...
I trust you, Batman.
Yeah.
And also... This is one of the last episodes that we watched the night before going to see the Batman for the first time.
Yes.
Obviously because it's a Riddler episode. Like,
Yeah.
this was one of the most important ones to watch. And the three of us were talking, like, I have heard, or you said this, Marco, I've heard that the riddles in the movie are kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And, like, after seeing the movie, I think they were great. Not only were they great, but they were, like, so much better than these ones. So
Yeah.
For sure.
we were kind of worried for nothing.
Yeah, the movie, the riddles in the movie were pretty solid, all things considered.
Like, they didn't... We were worried that you'd need too many context clues, but it wasn't really... That wasn't the case. They were mostly, like... Fittingly, they were riddles about corruption. And that's all you needed to, like, think about, really.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But they also kind of, like, rapid-fired them sometimes, too.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that one scene with the three back to
Yeah.
But yeah.
And
that
Batman's,
one
like,
specific
immediately
sequence.
just, like, answers.
But also, like, two of them weren't riddles. Like, the first one is, like, the first one he's like, justice. And he's like, yep. And then the second one is like, how much money is the answer? And Batman's like, just tell him how much money. And then, no, that's... Yeah.
That is exactly
and then
how
the
it
third
goes.
one is like, what's this guy's name? And that's where he's like, I can't tell his name.
The riddle wasn't what's the... Like, it's not that the answer you need to solve the riddle. It's like the riddle was... You need to find out what the question he's asking.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't straight up ask how much do you take as a bribe.
Absolutely.
But I get what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
The concept of what a riddle is needs to be further analyzed before they continue doing this.
It's the Scarecrow problem, where, like, a lot of times the Riddler's riddles are just, like, jokes. Or, like, or not,
or every villain is the Riddler.
Yes, exactly. Like, 100%. It is a little bit of, like, it's tough. It's tough to get it exactly right.
Yeah,
so.
there's a very fine line that they dance around a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the movie did a pretty good job, though.
I think the movie does a very solid job, I will say for sure. One thing I struggled with a little bit, and I kind of go back and forth on, I like the fact that Robin's inclusion in this is like, I'm a young person, and so there's like context with the video game that I can provide that you don't have. Because like the Minotaur maze they get trapped in is based on a video game that Edward Nygma wrote. He's like a game designer kind of, which is actually kind of a cool twist.
It is.
But also it very much has shades of Jurassic Park. I know computers, and then at the end she uses the computer. I like that they didn't.
The Unix system.
Yeah, I like that they didn't like go fully in that direction. Like at the end, Robin isn't like, I know video games.
I'm a hacker.
Like, no, not at all. Like Batman still solves the thing at the end of the day. I like how Robin is like trying to play the game, and Batman is like, fuck it, and he just jumps on the hand of fate and reprograms it. And the Riddler's like, what the shit?
It's like, you can't do that.
That's what it... So we were talking about the hand riddle. It's because there was a giant floating hand in the maze because the video game had like a cursor.
Yes, but like in the context in the episode, it still made no sense. But yes.
He's like, you need the upper hand or something.
Yeah.
No, that would have been more clever. That's giving it too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you take out a Minotaur with a single blow? Like this.
Anyway, good episode.
Yeah, pretty solid.
No, very solid. Silly, funny, good origin. Good
Now
fun.
we get to one of two episodes in this entire rewatch that I picked, and I was not sure how you guys were going to feel about. Because there are, like, as much as this show is, like, serious and character-driven, there are also very silly episodes. And so this is one of them. It's Almost Got Him, which is the highest-rated episode at IMDb.
I see that. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
It is a great episode.
It is.
so much fun. So the premise of it is there's like this dingy bar where all the villains, like Joker, Two-Face, Killer Croc, someone else, Poison Ivy, and maybe someone else. Oh, Penguin maybe.
Yeah, Penguin's there.
It was.
They're all just sitting around playing cards, which I love. First of all, it's very funny, and they're talking about.
And this isn't like a hideout. Like there are other people in this bar.
Yeah, it's just a bar.
it's just a bar.
It's just like a seedy
They're
bar.
just there.
Oh yeah,
5
all
most
of them.
wanted people in Gotham.
Yeah.
Just playing poker.
Yep. And they're basically all just telling stories, and we flash back to and see the stories of like times they almost beat Batman.
Yes.
And they're all funny, and they lose in all of them, and all the villains are getting
Two Faces is hilarious. With
Yes.
a giant coin that crushes.
It
I love
crushes
Killer Crocs. He's like, and I threw a rock at him.
Anyone else want to go? Me! There I was, holed up in this quarry. When Batman came nosing around, he was getting closer.
And?
I threw a rock at him.
I love that. Like, we'll get to why that makes even more sense. But yeah, in context, they're all telling these stories, and then the Killer Crocs is just, so I trapped him, and I threw a rock, and then they cut back, and the rest of the villains are like, okay?
Like, amongst villains, he's a joke.
Yeah, which is so funny because he is. Like, he's such a dumb character, so that is really funny. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's great. And there's so many, like, great jokes in between the villains. Like, I think at one point, like, Two-Face is, like, two of a kind or something. Like, they're playing, and, like, people are
I'm sure.
making fun of him. They're like, yeah, of course you would have two of a kind. Also, Harvey Dent and Pamela Isley in the show dated before they became villains, and so when they're villains in this, they kind of like rib each other a little bit, so that's fun too. So much great character stuff.
No,
I think this is also the first time, besides the Phantasm movie, where Angelo and I saw the Joker in this show.
Yes, it would be.
We didn't do any Joker episodes because you said most of them are actually kind of disappointing.
Most of them are fine, but they're not like super inventive. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was great because not only did you each, villain get their own time in the spotlight, I agree that a lot of their like interactions with each other is what made that episode so great.
It's funny.
Because a lot of the other episodes are like, you get one villain, like this is what's going on, like you get 20 minutes of this. But those 20 minutes was spread throughout like 4 or 5 villains, you get all their interaction, and then the twist at the end, amazing.
So
incredible.
Good.
Loved it.
So the twist at
made
the end.
no sense, and incredible.
So basically, this whole time, as we're going in between stories, we're building up to the Joker story, right? And the Joker story literally just happened, and he's joking about how, like, I just got away from it, or whatever.
I walked right over here.
Right before the events of the episode.
And basically, it's this whole contraption where a bunch of shit happens. It doesn't really matter. And at the end of it, like, he captures Catwoman. And he's like, I still have Catwoman captured, and she's here. And that's when it's revealed that Killer Croc is just Batman in disguise who needed to find out where Catwoman was captured. And everyone else in the bar is just the GCPD, and Commissioner Gordon's there, and they capture all these villains. So fucking good.
Yeah.
So funny. Came out of nowhere.
No
never
idea
saw it.
how Batman was able to look exactly like Killer Croc.
Or sound like him.
I love this episode, but what would have been actually better is if they brought on Clayface.
That would have been so cool.
That would have been
cool. But yeah,
it's a cool episode.
No, very good episode. Very enjoyable.
If you like, and as you guys did, these kind of like silly villain interactions, there's another episode where the villains, oddly enough, like escape and kind of take over Arkham, and they put Batman on trial. And so there's like this whole trial where like Two-Face is the prosecutor and the Joker's the judge, and like the villains are in the witness stand, and they're basically putting Batman on trial and being like,
stop ruining our
fun.
Like
you ruined our lives. Like you are the reason we are the way we are.
You ruined their lives.
Yeah. But it's like this where like the villains have fun interplay and it's very silly and stupid. But it's I mean, this episode is great. I mean, it is funny with a cool twist, interesting plot stuff. It's great. Like it's an all around just like solid episode of the animated series, and we all really enjoyed it. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
It's nice every once in a while for Batman to take the backseat to the villains.
Yes.
For most of the series, like obviously it's very Batman centric. It is a Batman show.
Absolutely.
So every once in a while to have an episode like this where he isn't like the protagonist.
I'm going to make an overgeneralization to just say heroes really are only as good as their villains in a lot of these movies, shows, comics, instances. Like, you can have this great hero, but if the villains are very lackluster, the entire series is going to be a little bit on the lackluster side.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So, like Dan was saying, it's really nice that you get to see a lot of the villains take a spotlight every once in a while.
Yeah, it's cool. And also, like, just tonally, like, it's cool that because it's animated, we can have, like, fun episodes.
Yes.
Because I feel like DC, like, modern DC, they're so up their own ass about being serious. And, like, it's so cool to see, like, no, you can have, like, MCU-esque fun. Like,
Yeah.
you can be silly and fun. Like, you don't... Not everything is the end of the world. This episode is so good. It's so funny. Like,
Yeah, the only other context I could imagine this episode in is the game universe.
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, I could see this, and I would actually love to see this in the tone of the game universe. Like, just slightly darker, but
Yeah.
still funny, like, darkly comical.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's
For
great.
sure. For sure.
Anyway, episode's great.
Yep.
See the squid.
No.
Is that next?
Yeah. So
No.
next we're talking about the man who killed Batman. I'm surprised. Like, I think this episode is fine, but you guys hate this episode.
Well, I don't know if Dan hates it as much as I do.
I mean, I don't, like, viciously hate it. It's just, like, it's...
well, I'm not
I
going to
don't-
say I viciously hate it, but I'm probably never going to watch it again.
Okay, you know how we were just talking about Batman taking a backseat for his good villains?
Yeah.
This is, like, the opposite. Like, he
Yeah.
takes a backseat in this episode for just a really, like, dumb character.
He's just a random guy, and he's quite annoying in his own right, and...
I'm curious, like, you said you picked this for
Yeah.
us because it's such a iconic episode. Why?
It's just the Joker's speech that he gives at the eulogy when he's going to kill Sid the Squid. That speech is incredibly iconic because it's basically the Joker being like, how the fuck did you do this after all my years of trying and you've ruined my fun and I hate you? And like, Mark Hamill's performance is so great because he starts off very comical and funny and then he gets like really dark at one point when he's like fucking angry and immediately just breaks and goes back to like comical Joker. And like that's part of what Mark Hamill does so well in playing this role. But like that part is super iconic. Like that speech he gives, he's been asked to like recite it at a lot of Comic-Cons. Like he still has the speech memorized. So like that part. But yeah, I mean I agree. The plot of this is silly. It's just like it's like Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther, of like this guy that like is fumbling and like accidentally maybe killed Batman and is fumbling through his life and like is an idiot. And yeah.
It's just the fact that there was nothing to the story, because you know he didn't kill Batman.
Sure.
And he himself is not a very interesting character because he just fumbles around all over the place. And
Yeah.
all these crazy things happen like around him. But even the story itself is just him kind of recalling what happened.
Yeah.
So to me, there was just nothing interesting to kind of keep me gripped, because you know how it's going to end. You
That's
kind
fair.
of know like the steps that lead up to it. And him as a character, I'm like, I'm never going to see you again, and I'm kind of okay with that.
That's totally fair.
For context, for anyone who doesn't know, Sid the Squid is just this guy who's an up-and-coming, or wants to be an up-and-coming gangster, mobster. And the plot is essentially just Shark Tale, the movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean it's just Shark Tale.
Someone
is.
accidentally kills a feared person and becomes like this like superstar of, oh wow, he's the guy that killed so-and-so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
It's
it's
funny to think about, but yeah.
it's conceptually funny, and like again, like I do like Joker's anger at it. Like that's funny to me. Like
That this
no-
idiot killed Batman.
Yeah, and also
People.
not even just like that he did it, but also like why? Like now, what am I gonna do with? my
Yeah, I
life?
like that. I do like that of how Joker's angry with this guy for taking away his only source of fun.
Exactly. It's cool, but like that's it. That's the only thing to get from this episode.
Yeah.
Was this? Did we watch this in the first round before the Batman, or was this the start of the next one?
I want to say yes.
I think we watched it before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is like first.
Yeah.
First tier.
Yeah. Now we move on to Shadow of the Bat parts 1 and 2.
Okay. Oh, this is where we started post.
Yes, I believe this was after the Bat.
Ah, Shadow of the Bat, yes. Okay.
So yeah, Shadow of the Bat. This one we watch more for continuity because this introduces Barbara Gordon, Commissioner Gordon's daughter, becoming Batgirl in this universe, which is kind of cool because we already had Batman and Robin, and they are like a team. And there is a Robin origin episode that's a flashback episode that we didn't watch because it's just Robin's origin. His parents die at the circus. Batman takes him in, he becomes Robin. Like there's nothing much to it. But what's cool about this is...
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
In that Robin episode, who kills his parents?
It's just a gangster.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's not...
It's not the Joker?
Or Two-Face. Sometimes it's Two-Face. No, it's just a separate gangster. That's a villain that Robin, after becoming Robin, takes down.
Got it. James Chill.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, I mean, I like... What I think is cool about this is that Barbara... She's such an interesting character because she's not drafted to be... Like, she chooses to be Batgirl because she sees that her father works with Batman, and so she's kind of like inspired by that to try and help her father out, because the plot of the episode is that her father's being framed for corruption or something, and so like she tries to help him out, and that's why she chooses to be Batgirl. But it's kind of cool because then until a later episode where she officially becomes a member of the Bat family, she's more like this reluctant person that works independently of them, but that they will like team up with sometimes, which I think like improves the universe and makes it kind of cool.
And also connects really well to Beyond.
Absolutely, which we'll definitely talk about. That is a cool element too. This episode, like to me, again, this is one I watched a lot as a kid. I think just because it was the introduction to Batgirl, but it's mostly unremarkable, I find. I will say though, Robin going, "A girl?" is like so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That realization that,
yeah,
wow, a girl dressed as a bat, like unheard of.
I mean, considering the times, like it makes sense. You couldn't get away with something like that now,
No.
but back then, like it's fine. And I agree that the episodes themselves were a little bit lackluster, but like the origin, like the story,
Yeah.
like Barbara Gordon as a character, like I really like it, and I really like how they progressed her character kind of throughout the story too.
Me too, yeah.
100%. Except for the one weird part that's not canon.
Yes.
Oh,
which
yeah.
we'll talk
Which
about
was-
later,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure. But,
It's not canon. Not canon. Okay, so yeah.
It is, though. That's what's sad about it.
Not in Marco's mind.
Just anything can be canon. It doesn't
Anything
have to-
cannot be canon.
Anything-
We'll just take out what we want and
Inherently
create our own
untrue.
story.
The word canon
Yeah, I
means...
know.
No, not at all.
But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, yeah, it's cool that she's like this reluctant member, but won't become a true member until a little bit later. And it's also cool because Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, outside of the costumes, have a relationship, and like they don't realize that they're Robin and Batgirl.
Which is actually like really cool.
It's cool. It adds a fun little dynamic until that all comes around and pays off in a later episode, which is a really great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also just want to take note of like that subway scene, and I think it was in episode 2
yeah.
of this,
Yep.
where literally they just made their lives like increasingly more difficult with the decisions they were making.
Yep.
And I don't know.
forgot about that.
It's just stuff like that which makes it like a little bit more lackluster and silly. Because they just put themselves in really difficult situations and are like, how do we get out of this? Let's make ourselves more trapped.
Yeah, so, okay. They're in a flooding tunnel. But the tunnel isn't, like, flooding. Like, it's just there's flowing water flowing through it.
Yeah.
And it's a subway tunnel. And there's an abandoned subway car in there. So they decide to climb in there, which is filling up with water.
Yeah.
It would have been safer just chilling in the water outside the subway car.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they climb into this car, and now there's a ticking time element.
Because they could drown.
It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
I don't know.
I have a question, though. Was Barbara Gordon in episodes before this, just as Barbara Gordon?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't
So-
remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
And if not, she should have been. But yeah, I think she was. At least in passing. Like, I think at least she was mentioned as like a character that exists. I don't remember if Barbara herself like appears on screen to be like, "Hi, I'm Barbara. I don't do anything yet," but like
I'll be important soon.
I'll be important one day. Yeah. Okay, I will say I much prefer her Batgirl costume in this as opposed to the season 4 redesign. Because in this, it's a gray and blue suit, and in the season 4 redesign, it's all black with the gold.
Yeah.
I think all black with the gold, like, it does look good. They both look good, but there's something about this that's just very, like, classic Batgirl to me, and I just personally really like the way it looks.
I think I prefer the other one, though, just so that she looks different enough from the color scheme of Batman.
That's fair. That's fair.
They both look good, though. You're right.
Yeah, they're both nice looking.
To me, it's like the original one is her like self-initiation, like she kind
Yeah.
of created it, and the black and gold one is more like Bruce being like, no, I want you to look a little bit more the part, like let me make a suit for you kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense too. And also, like, I think this costume, is almost like Well, doesn't it start as her saying, like, that Batman needs to show up at the trial?
Yep.
And
yeah,
then
she's just imitating Batman.
So I guess that makes sense. Yeah, and then later she gets, like, her own official costume. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else before we move on to the next?
I don't think so.
All good. Excited to talk more about her later.
Riddler's Reform.
All right.
This is
He's
a great
back.
episode. I love this episode personally.
I think I even like it better than the other Riddler episode.
Me too.
No, agreed. This one is a lot better. Like him coming back, but kind of being reformed to be, I'm a creator of toys now, even though what he made was essentially just a Rubik's Cube, if I remember correctly.
It was actually a Rubik's Pyramid.
Yes, it was like different, but
Yeah.
exactly the same.
To
but-
avoid copyright.
Yes, of course.
This is great. It reminds me a lot of Daredevil Season 3, where Kingpin is like...
Ooh, yeah.
Like he's freed, and he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm a changed man. I'm like, just leave me alone, Daredevil." But he's plotting something the entire time.
Yeah.
That is this.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, I think it's cool. As a kid, this is one I watched a lot. I really, really dug it. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing, I guess, in particular to say other than that, like, the concept is just...
Yeah, I like the beginning though, where like there's this bust at the toy factory, and it's like, look at all this Riddler paraphernalia, and it's like, what do you mean? This is my new toy line.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that was cool. Cool twist.
Okay, also, there are a couple things. First of all, I really like the riddles in this.
Yes.
Like, there's the one where he thinks it's like an address, but it turns out it's coordinates, or maybe it's the other way around or something.
Yeah.
And, like, he gets it wrong. I was like, oh, that's cool, because Riddler writes it, but then he flips the board, and Batman's like, fuck, I have to flip the thing.
Right.
That's really cool. That's, like, really great Riddler
Yeah, they
writing.
stepped up the riddles in this episode.
Oh, yeah. I also love, though, how it ends. Because it ends with Batman being trapped, and, like, against all odds, but then he doesn't blow up. And the Riddler is, like... And I love it because this is the last time we, like, see Riddler, other than, like, he just shows up and is, like, in the background of some scenes. But... this is the last time we really see him as a character in this show. And he's left going, like, how did he do it? Like, I can't figure out how he did it. Like, the Riddler is left with a riddle. Like, the unanswerable riddle of, like, how did Batman survive? I will admit the resolution of how he survived is dumb.
Very.
But, like...
It's Indiana Jones level.
It's literally Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
He jumped into the safe.
He's like, there was a safe. I jumped in the safe. And I was like, oh.
But I don't get, like, how... that was something that Riddler couldn't
figure out,
yeah.
Yeah, that's why I wish it was a bit more clever. But, like, I like the idea of it.
But the structuring of telling that as a flashback to be, like, to keep us guessing and put us in the Riddler's place of, I can't figure out how he did this.
And that's probably why he didn't figure it out, because that was outside knowledge we didn't even have until that flashback.
Yeah.
Even we were wondering, like, how did he... I remember asking them, like, does he get out of this?
Yeah,
we were wondering.
And then it flashed forward, and I'm like, oh, we don't even get to find out. And then it's later that they're like, oh yeah, there's a safe. Like, Riddler probably didn't even know that either.
Yeah. I kind of wish we just never found out.
Me too.
I would have been happy with that resolution of just not knowing.
It would have been cool for Robin to be like, how did you do it? And Batman to be like, because I'm Batman. Like, it just ends. Like, we don't get a resolution.
I would have totally been down for that.
Yeah, me too. But either way, I think this was better than just telling it linearly of, like,
100%.
us seeing him jump in the safe, whatever, like, get out of the situation, but then Riddler just be like, how did you do it? I can't figure it out.
Yeah,
this
for
is
sure.
better.
I agree 100%. It's a cool episode.
We'll get to this later, but, like, a lot of my top-rated episodes are all ones that made me ask questions or, like, left me guessing in some way.
It's crazy how much these 20-minute cartoon episodes have, like, the really good ones have such good, like, narrative momentum to them.
Yeah.
Where, like, you're actively, like, what's happening? Like, what's going on in the story? Like, it's so engaging. It's not... Like, most cartoons are just, like, random shit happens for no reason. And you just enjoy it. Yeah. I will say, though, this, like, scene of, like, Batman being stuck and having to figure a way out is pretty much the thing that ruins the scene in The Batman for me when Gil Coulson has the bomb on his neck. And for 2 minutes, Batman is just, like, there, being like, yeah, so just, answer the riddles. I mean, I'll help you answer. And I'm like, and we talked about this of, like, okay, what could he realistically do? Like, obviously he can't just leave Gil to die, like, not that. But I think I had said, like, well, what if maybe he had, like, the device, like, in the Arkham games where he's trying to, like, decrypt it and, like, unlock it? Or just, like, have him try to do something
Yeah.
other than just stand there.
Freeze pill.
Like, literally any, like, or even maybe he goes to try to take it off, and, like, the time, like, drops on it, and the Riddler's like, like, don't fucking do that, like, you can't mess with the game, like, something like that. It's not even something I necessarily would have thought of if we weren't, like, just watching these right around that time. That's definitely what cued it in for me, of like, it feels kind of odd, but
Yeah.
that's alright.
We digress.
Too bad there wasn't a safe lying around.
Too bad there wasn't a safe. He could have put his head in the safe.
Because that would have saved him.
That's why it's called a safe, Angelo. You're safe.
You're safe.
From him.
So, so we are now in season 4. So as I mentioned, season 4, there was like a new animation style, but they also kind of reset the universe a little bit. So at the start of season 4, Batgirl is a part of the Bat family. Bruce has a new Robin, his second Robin, which is Tim Drake. Although Tim Drake in this universe is very much an amalgamation of Tim Drake and Jason Todd. So like in the Tim Drake origin that there's an episode of that we didn't watch, it's just the Jason Todd origin of like he's like trying to steal the wheels off the Batmobile basically, and Bruce catches him. So like they really combine those two characters, and we'll further get into that in Batman Beyond. I don't know why, but whatever. That's what they decided to do. Fair enough. So yeah, Batman's got his kind of Bat family going on, and Dick Grayson is now Nightwing. He's no longer Robin.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! The greatest character. Everyone loves Nightwing. Nightwing's so... How could you not like Nightwing? He's the best. But yeah, there's a time jump, and that's sort of the status quo now for season 4. Just wanted to set that. The first episode we're going to talk about is Over the Edge. Now,
yes.
Over the Edge starts off with a bang. You know what I mean? Jim Gordon in the Batcave, calling Batman Bruce Wayne, giving him a warning. We're gonna give you a warning, and then firing a bazooka at him.
Warning
bazooka.
bazooka.
That joke, yeah.
Yeah.
This was a continued joke, by the way.
The GCPD is so like
trigger happy,
laissez-faire with their guns. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. But yeah, I mean. And you're kind of like, what? And this is like the quintessential, like, let's go back. Let's see what... And so, like, you cut back and, like, what happened? Like, where did this all start?
This might be my favorite episode opening.
Yeah.
Of all the ones.
Because it's so, like, dynamic. It's like, what the fuck is happening? Like, yeah. Yeah, so you flash back and you find out that the Bat family was in a fight with the Scarecrow. And at one point, the Scarecrow kind of ran up to the roof. And Barbara Gordon chased him down. And he pushes her over the edge. And Batgirl crashes on Commissioner Gordon's car.
Which we get to see, by the way.
Which we see, and as she's dying, Gordon takes the mask off and is like, holy shit, this is my daughter.
And she dies
and
on
then
screen.
She dies on
because
screen.
Batman neglected to give her a Batclaw for some reason, which they all have all the time.
Fair. And so, yeah, Gordon pretty quickly deduces, once he actually puts his head to it, that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Which I kind of like Gordon can figure it out at any time, but like just kind of doesn't care.
I always like to be on the train of thought that he knows, but just chooses not to know.
Yes.
Same with what he does with
later,
Barbara.
Exactly.
He knows, but he just chooses not to know.
I kind of feel the same way, and I think the ending of this episode implies that as well. But yeah. So the Bat family is being hunted down by Gordon, basically, and you're kind of like, what the fuck? And known associates are being thrown in jail for stuff that's happened. Like, Nightwing gets captured, he gets like put in jail. Ultimately, Gordon ends up recruiting Bane to come fuck up Batman because he knows that's the only chance, which is cool. And it all culminates in this big fight on the roof with the Bat symbol, and the Bat symbol gets destroyed. And then turns out it's all a dream. But like, it's not stupid. It's not like a stupid it was all a dream. It's cool because Barbara Gordon wakes up and it turns out that when she chased Scarecrow up to the roof, she got hit with fear toxin. And so what we're seeing is just her hallucination of like her worst fear, which is basically that like her being Batgirl would ruin everyone else's lives.
Yes.
That she
What would you call that phobia?
Existential dread, I guess.
Her biggest fear is her own demise.
Yeah. Mortality.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a great episode. I also didn't see... I mean, I guess that's why they were able to get away with killing Batgirl on screen.
Yeah.
But... because she didn't actually die. But I didn't see it coming even though we see at the beginning her fighting Scarecrow.
And you know what, too? And that's the thing, because I remember watching this episode and me asking for like 10 minutes. There's no way they killed her. I'm like, there's zero possibility that she dies.
Where we're like, holy shit, a death in this show?
And it never clicked in my head, and it should have, that, you know, it was Scarecrow. Like, he was there. Like, there should be an underlying thing here. But the episode itself was so dramatic, and they put so much time into, like, what steps would actually happen if she died and was, like, unmasked, that they played it off so well that I'm like, holy crap, they could just go with this. Like, this could be a thing.
It's cool.
And even after she wakes up and she kind of realizes, like, crap, I kind of need to tell my father what's going on to avoid this from happening.
Yes.
And then he's like, don't. Like, I really liked that scene, I'll be honest. Just because he kind of, you know, indicates that he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
He respects it.
Yeah.
It's really, it is so cool. It's a really great episode. It's so character driven, like all the great stuff. It's so character driven, and it's got a good mystery to it, and it's all very, like, it feels very satisfying. Like,
yes,
the concept of, like, and it was all a dream episode is so like dangerous, because that could go so wrong, and the fact that they, like, pull it off and it ends up being one of the better episodes of the whole show is, like, just props to them.
We saw 2 dream episodes, and they were both, like,
both
amazing.
fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely. Next episode,
is
Old Wounds.
Yes, Old Wounds. I like this episode a lot.
This is great, yeah.
So this episode is basically centered around present day new Robin, Tim Drake, working with Nightwing, and he basically asks Nightwing, like, please tell me what happened. Like, and basically it's just the audience, like, so what happened in between?
Yeah.
And I love, like, Nightwing's response is things change. And he's like, why don't you ask Batman? And Tim's like, I did. And you know what he said? Things change.
Yeah.
Which gets brought back a little bit later in the episode. But,
fantastic.
So we flash back to what happened. And I love it. Like, this is like the quintessential Robin episode for me, because it pays off all the elements of why Robin's such a cool character.
Yeah.
Because, like, Bruce is a selfish dick. And, like, he was too busy being Batman to even bother going to Robin's graduation. And Robin is already kind of frustrated at him, and then even when they're working together, it's like Bruce is almost, like, starting to get to that age where he's, like, a little bit on edge, like he's, like, getting more and more a little bit unstable. And what really sets Robin off is the fact that they basically, like, hunt this guy down, and Bruce starts, like, interrogating him in front of his child. And his child is, like, crying, and Robin is like, I'm done with this.
I remember this scene. So Robin just politely, like, either knocks on the door or, like, confronts the guy going into his apartment. He's like, I need to talk to you about something.
Batman comes smashing through the window, puts his neck up against the wall.
Starts punching him in front of his family.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
The little kid is just like, I'll protect you, Dad. And it's like, oh man, this is fucked up.
This is, like, that's the reason this is so high up for me, this episode, is how fucked up it gets. And this is sort of the beginning of the end of, like, Batman's psyche.
Yeah.
This is a good flash forward for what you see in Beyond.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things that we've kind of mentioned that I really like about this. So one that continuously kind of gets brought up is it's not just him that kind of separates from Batman. Everyone eventually kind of finds their way out of his life. And they all kind of say the same thing about, like, the reasons why. But, like, this is the first time we really kind of got that narrative of not just, like, things change, but, like, the reasons behind it. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of going back to the original part of Batman, too, that they want to also live kind of normal, better lives. Like, they're not just stuck in this persona, whereas Bruce is stuck as Batman.
Yep.
But, you know, Nightwing has a life outside of it, like, Batgirl has a life outside of it, and they kind of want to continue that balance, whereas Batman, like you said, is more selfish. He's just like, this is what we got to do every night, like, evil never sleeps.
Yeah, this is the mission.
And they all just kind of start to see that, and it brings up the point of they all feel like they had a choice in being with him.
Yeah.
And then they all kind of start to realize, like, you manipulated us. Like, you did this to us.
Yeah.
And, like, turned us into this. And it's crazy that continues to get brought up throughout his life, too, as Bruce's life.
It's so cool. And, like, it sets that precedent. And really, so it's not just Bruce missing the grad. It's not just Bruce fucking horrifically abusing this man. But the actual moment when Robin quits is... So basically, this is also when Barbara Gordon finally gets brought into the Bat family. So she finally learns that Bruce Wayne is Batman. And it's actually a really sweet moment where they go down to the Batcave and then Alfred is like, so you find out our secret? I am Batman, yes, this whole time. Which, like, I just love, because Alfred doesn't get too much to do in the show.
No.
But, like, whenever he needs to be there for Bruce, he's always there. And I love that. He's like,
Yes.
all right, I guess I'm taking the blame for this. It's so cool. And Bruce is like, it's cool.
That's kind of like in The Dark Knight when Bruce is like, I'm going to tell them this whole thing was your idea.
Yeah, exactly. So good. But yeah, so Barbara finally gets brought in, and she's finally working, and then so there's this big culmination at the end with the Joker, where they have to beat the Joker, and Robin, Dick Grayson Robin, like, finds out that Barbara has now been brought into the mix, and like he has a relationship with Barbara, and he finds out that it's Barbara, and this is kind of his turning point, and yeah, this is where you get the line of, Barbara's like, I wanted this, and he's like, no, you think you wanted this. But it's also, like, it reminds me so much of that, like, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like, the strings, like, conspiracy theory, because he's like, no, you think you wanted this, but you didn't want this. This is what he does to people. He manipulates them. He's a manipulator. And then Batman's like, I thought we had the same ideals. And that's when Dick says the line, well, things changed. I changed. And he takes off his Robin costume, and Batman's like, wait, and he straight up clocks Batman across the face, and is like,
oh, yeah.
fuck this, and he leaves.
Yeah.
So good.
But then this episode has a nice ending that suggests that Batman...
kind of reformed.
Yeah, he learned from this experience himself, where this person that he confronted and beat the shit out of in front of his family, he later... So this guy was someone who just got kind of roped up in the mob. Like, he's not like an evil person. It was very hesitant.
Side hustle, money for him.
Yeah, he was desperate. And later in life, Batman would check up on him. Like, he got him a job, I'm pretty sure.
At Wayne Enterprises.
At Wayne Enterprises, that's right. And yeah, he's like... He recognizes what he did wrong. Yeah. For cool. Nightwing to go its separate ways. So.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's a very touching episode. Great character
stuff. It's a very mature episode.
It is.
It is.
And it just shows that, Batman does make mistakes, and it shows that he can fix those mistakes, and it just was a little too late for Nightwing. He was already pretty set on his decision, and something as little as that in the grand scheme of things wasn't going to change his mind.
Well, and like we also talk about the fact that like Nightwing is ultimately like Bruce's greatest success because like he did learn to like surpass it.
Yeah.
Like at the end of this episode, it's like, oh, Batman had something to learn from Nightwing about like how to be this person. Like, because Nightwing is all the skill of Batman combined with a stable personality. Like he is the superior Batman in every way, and like so that's cool. It's cool to see that. But also just like it's so cool to get this. The honk was on our end if it comes through in your thing. It's cool to see Barbara be on this side of it of like I wanted this and. Dick being like, no, you think you wanted this. Because this gets so beautifully, like, paid off in Batman Beyond, which we'll get to in a few hours one day.
We might make this a two-parter.
Yeah.
Well, I think, aren't we done with...
There's one more.
One more, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which we don't have to talk too much about, but it's Mad Love.
Right.
This is the origin of Harley Quinn. The one that everyone knows.
Yeah, I think, like, most people will probably be familiar... with the origin of Harley Quinn, and this is where it comes from. There's not really too much to talk about. It's good, like, and we owe it all to this, because, again, this is where it came from. It's cool.
It's just the origin. Harleen Quinzel.
Yeah. One thing I don't like, though, is that this is the only time in Season 4 that we saw the Joker, and this is the first time we saw his new art style.
Ooh, which sucks.
Yeah,
it's real bad.
No, I'm a big fan of Harley. Like, I like her origin. I like her character. I like how she gets, like, manipulated by the Joker and everything. And I really like how in this episode too, she defeats the Batman.
Yeah.
Like she like officially does defeat him, and then Joker comes in and he goes, what the hell are you doing? Like this is no fun at all. Like you can't just go to
kill Batman.
Yeah, you can't beat Batman.
I love that as sort of a through line of the series that like various people actually end up doing a better job at almost beating Batman, but like it's almost implied that like Joker's maybe not even trying to necessarily kill him.
No, absolutely.
Why would he? What would I do without you? You know?
Yeah.
Heath Ledger. Yeah. Like it's so cool. But I love when they're fighting on the train and Batman's taunting him, and he's like, you really had me there. And he's like, if you hadn't come, like I would have been fucked. I had no way out of that. It's like, you could never have done that. And Joker's like, fuck off, dude. It's so good.
No, it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, as an episode, like, even just her aside, like, I did really enjoy it as an episode.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Is this the episode where Joker falls into like a...
Smokestack?
Yeah.
Yes. Continuing the tradition of the Joker should be dead, but he's not.
And Batman breaking ceiling lights. That's another
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Fantastic.
That's just like every episode.
That is every episode. We'll get into that probably a little bit later. But yeah, Batman just loves breaking through freaking ceiling lights for
Why
some
would you
reason.
glass.
not?
It's glass specifically.
Yes, glass.
So cool. It's so cool. It looks cool every time. It never isn't cool.
Like, Batman, there's a door, there's a wall, there's many other entrances.
The only time it isn't cool is in Old Wounds when he does
Yeah.
it to go beat up an innocent person.
But that is funny, though. I mean, it is hysterical when he
Yeah,
just,
oh, it's hilarious.
boom, crashes through.
And
like
it just
we were
blows
doing.
my mind why there's so many buildings with skylights in Gotham.
Yeah. Just because they know
It's more of a
Batman's
hazard
gonna...
at this point.
It
Exactly.
is.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say, like, I don't think Harley has ever been done better than she was in this show. Like,
I'll agree.
Voice casting and characterization, from the second she was brought into comics and any other media, I just feel like she has just become the classic, like, over-sexualized, like, she's hot. Isn't she hot? Even in the Arkham games, like, like she has more to do in that than a lot of media, but again, it's like, why is she dressed like that? This is a video game?
Like, she's actually smart, though, is the crazy thing. Like,
Yeah.
she
I know.
is a doctor. She is a
Yes.
psychiatrist. Like, there's a lot to her that they could use, but you're right. She ends up becoming more of an over-sexualized figure, and like a dumb one at that.
Yeah, that's
but-
the thing, is like, and you even think about like I love, oh my god, like before, when it was just like the rumors of like, we're making a Suicide Squad movie, right? I from day one, from the moment I saw Wolf of Wall Street, I was like, this woman is Harley Quinn. I was like, this woman will be live action Harley Quinn. And then they cast her, and I was like, perfect. And like, she is great, but they just give her nothing to do but be hot and smash things all the time. And I'm like, how, like, just, yeah, like, what I love about the show is she is silly. She's like a silly sidekick, but there are those moments of like, no, she knows like what's happening. And I like the fact that her costume is a ridiculous Harley Quinn costume.
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be silly. That's the joke. Like, that, because it's the Joker, you know, it's supposed to be funny. Like, not everything has to be, like, horrific or sexual. Sometimes things can just be funny.
Yeah, and even like in the Suicide Squad movie, the first one anyway, like, even beyond just like sexualizing the costume, it just like, it was
sucks.
garbage.
It's so boring.
It was barely even a costume. Like, it was just clothes.
Yeah. I don't know. I totally agree. It's...
Yeah, I think like for most of the characters and aspects of Gotham, we've said like, this is like, the only thing that did this better was like the games. But
Yeah.
I think this is one of the instances where this is like the perfect interpretation of something.
Yeah.
She's great.
I
in the
agree
show.
100%. She's great. They also actually made a comic adaptation of this episode.
Oh, nice.
Actually, I think what happened was they wanted to do this episode in the original, like, 3 seasons, and they couldn't, so they made a comic adaptation, but then in season 4, they, like, were finally allowed to make the episode, so, like, it was almost like they were adapting a comic, but the comic was adapted from the script from the episode that never got made, so, like, it's kind of an interesting little circle of life thing there, but yeah. Cool. Yeah. All right.
So now it's the movie, right?
Yeah, so
Okay, cool.
after the run of the Batman animated series, as I mentioned, Superman the animated series was a thing, and then within that there was a crossover called World's Finest,
But it's actually called
the Batman Superman movie, which is what they rebranded it when they packaged it as a movie. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, what else to say other than you guys said it best when we were watching it. Like, it's so fun. It's such a
Yes.
good time.
Yeah, this is like an actual good Batman. I mean, I hesitate to say Batman v Superman because it's not like there's a fight between them, but there's moments where their rivalry really stands
Yeah.
out, and that's like the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
And I love seeing the other side of Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, being a lot more extroverted, a lot more of his charismatic self. Like, the fact that he chose, like, Lois to be his, like, love interest for this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming, like, at first, but when it started to be introduced, I'm like, that's so interesting.
It's cool.
Like, there's so many interesting things that can happen from this. And just those, like, moments when, like, Superman and Batman started figuring out each other's, like, personas and, like, the way, like, they were trying to be so superior to one another. It was just, it was so great all the way through.
It's cool. I mean, it has, I like it because it's, like, from the second he lands in Metropolis, he's like, okay, Lois. Which, because as we established, everyone knows Lois Lane in this universe. Like, Superman always saves her. And the whole reason he's going to Metropolis is because the Joker has stolen this rare crystal dragon thing that's made entirely of kryptonite. And so he's like, well, he must be going to fuck with Superman. So he needs to get in contact with Superman. And you even see at some of Bruce and Lois's earlier dates, he's like, so, how do you contact Superman? You guys have like a signal or something? And she's like, no, we don't. But what I like, again, showing to like Batman's character, is he's just like such a simp. Like, he literally, like, he gets any attention from a woman and he's like, I'm in love. And so, like, immediately he's like, oh yeah, maybe I do just like you and maybe we'll just be in a relationship now. Because he's just a fucking, like, idiot. Like,
but then it also turns into him, like, cucking Clark straight up. Like, there's so many times when Clark walks in on them on a date or something.
Yeah.
Or, like, Bruce is shirtless and at her apartment.
Yeah.
And poor Lois, when she finds out that he's Batman, and she's just like, again, like, I'm doing this all over again.
So, here's a little fun fact. The voice actress that plays Lois Lane is also the voice of Andrea in Phantasm.
Really?
Oh.
Which is kind of fun, because it's like Batman's two love interests are voiced by the same woman. Which, like, is not anything.
He just falls for the voice.
Yes, but it's just kind of an interesting
That's cool.
thing.
That is.
It's just a fun tidbit. Yeah, I mean, you guys touched on it, but, like, I think what's so cool, obviously this is just a quintessential team-up, where it's like, the Joker and Lex Luthor are teaming up, and so Batman and Superman have to team up to stop them. But the whole premise is cool, like, Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor, like, being these industry titans, like, they are working together, but really Bruce is using it to spy on Lex. That's cool. Like I said, all the voice acting is phenomenal across the board, but yeah, I mean, seeing Batman interact with Superman, like, seeing my definitive Batman interact with my definitive Superman is so much fun. Like, all their interactions are so great. We touched on it, like, we should talk about it again, though, how they meet. It's so good.
Oh, like how Batman and Superman meet?
Yes, because basically Batman's interrogating someone, being a dick, as per usual. Superman shows up.
I'm sure he smashed through a window at some point.
Oh, he did. Remember, he smashes through the skylight, and then he fucks up the club, and there's like a girl dancing in a cage, and he uses that to hit someone.
Oh, yeah.
But so he's interrogating someone to try and find out where the Joker is, and Superman shows up and is kind of like, why are you here? Can you stop? And immediately, I love it, Superman just uses his X-ray vision, and it's like, oh, you're Bruce Wayne. And Batman's like, you peeked. And then, like, and then Superman tries to be threatening, and Batman just, like, has a little bit of kryptonite and is like, how about that? And Superman's like, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, that's why I'm here, jackass. And so he, like, leaves. Superman goes home that night, and is just, like, chilling in his room, and he notices that there's a tracer on his suit, like a bat tracer. And so he goes and looks out the window. Clark Kent goes and looks out the window and uses his supervision and sees that across town, Batman is watching him with binoculars because he was so pissed off that he found out who he was that he tracked him back to his house. And Batman just gives the most smug little, like, salute.
No, it's a thumbs up.
Oh, he gives a thumbs up. He, like, smiles and, like, gives a thumbs up and then just leaves. And Clark's like, touche. And, like, I love that. Like, I love their, like, little friendly banter and rivalry, but they clearly are, like, have the same goals.
Yeah.
And they're, like, friends, but it's, like, it's silly. Like, it's so much fun. Like,
I enjoyed that so much more than the idea of them not liking each other
Of
and
course.
versing each other. I love this, like, interaction that they have all the time where they're constantly, like, butting heads to be superior, but at the same time, like, when something goes down, they're like, okay, we need to do something about this first.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, what I like, it's not even so much that both of them are trying to be superior, it's Batman's trying to be superior. And
Yeah.
Superman's like, What are you doing, man?
yeah.
We have the same goal. Like, stop being such a child.
Yeah,
that
it's
is
so
true.
Cool.
That is true.
I love their friendship. Like, their friendship is so fun. It's so cool.
Is this also the movie where Joker and Lex Luthor level Metropolis with that ship?
Yes, it is. Because, basically at the end of the movie... Okay, so basically, the whole reason Joker's working with Lex is because Joker... It's set up earlier in the movie, like, all his operations in Gotham have been shut down by Batman. So, like, he has no income, he has nothing. And so, he basically tells Lex, hey, I have all this kryptonite, I will kill Superman, you have to pay me $1 million or whatever. And when that plan falls through, because Superman and Batman team up, Lex basically is like, alright, I'm just going to kill you now. Like, and I'm going to take the kryptonite for myself. At which point, Joker captures Lex, and then they get in a ship and fly around Metropolis, and he starts destroying Lex's buildings. Because he's like, fuck you. Fuck you for trying to double-cross me. It's so good. So funny. And then they gotta stop him. And the Joker dies again, but not really, because they don't find the body.
Yeah,
they never find the body.
This is the last time we saw him until the other movie.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like, canonically, you could have said he died because he never came back, but he also was never dead.
the flashbacks in Return...
Oh, I guess that's the last time.
Yeah, that has to be the last time in
Joker.
In Return of Joker. But, anyway.
I always forget about that, right.
It's cool. It is, it's just fun. It's a really good... It's like, when you watch this and you watch Batman v Superman, and it's like, how did you fuck it up so badly when, like, this is the blueprint?
It could have been so fun.
Could have been so fun. I'm sad that it wasn't. But
now we're on to Batman Beyond, right?
Well, first, our quotes.
Oh, yeah. Now we have to do our end of the animated series quotes.
Okay. So, I'll go first, because mine was already stolen from earlier, so...
So is mine.
Oh, well, there we go.
Do we have the same one?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
So, mine is another one, so, it's from Old Wounds.
Okay.
Oh.
And Marco had said this one earlier. So, Miss Gordon, I see you've discovered our little secret. Yes, I admit it. I am Batman.
Oh, the Alfred
one. So I've now done 2 Alfred quotes because he is an amazing character and very underutilized sometimes. But I just love how, again, like you said, he just was always covering. And I just love the fact that he would even try to make her believe.
I know,
like,
it's so good.
Oh, you figured it all out. I am Batman.
Yeah, it's so funny.
So
He's
I
like
love
80
that.
years old.
Yeah, I love it. And just the idea of like an Alfred Batman is incredible.
That would be a cool Elseworlds comic.
It would be.
If Alfred had to step in as Batman.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But like 50-year-old Alfred with military training.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, mine is from... We also said it before. It's from the Two-Face episode.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure you know what it is, but it's when Bruce realizes what happened to Harvey. He's like, Harvey, no.
Oh,
yeah, just in this comically slow delivery.
Harvey, no.
Out of the whole animated series, that's my favorite number 1 line.
Nice. Mine is, I mentioned Sam the Night, I am Batman.
Yeah, which is iconic, amazing.
No, not now.
You are a disgrace.
No, you are not my father. I am not a disgrace. I am vengeance. I am the Knight. I am Batman!
Wow. What a quote. Oh, so good. Hey everyone, Marco here. Just a little editor's note. At this point, about 2.5 hours in, me, Dan, and Angelo did continue to record our conversation about Batman Beyond and Batman Beyond Return of the Joker. However, it's basically equal to the same amount of length, so that is going to be next week's episode 49 of the podcast, which will be titled Batman Beyond. So please go check that out if you have any interest in hearing us talk about Batman Beyond, as well as we're going to do the ultimate rankings at the end of that episode for the whole universe. So please go check that out and catch you on the flip side.
Thanks again for listening to the feature-length podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you liked this video or audio. Give us a rating and review if the platform you're listening to us on allows that. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes of the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the bell to be notified when we post a new video, or follow the podcast on Spotify. If you want to connect with us directly, you can follow us on Instagram at featurelengthpodcast, or even send us an email at featurelengthpodcast@gmail.com. Catch you on the flip side.